It's the show. You've tuned into it. It's happening now. There is no escape. You can't stop it. It's begun. Hi, I'm Forrest Valkai, and I'm joined today by the beautiful and charming Matt Dillahunty. How are you doing today, my friend?
Evidently, despite all of my stuff, I'm beautiful and charming. So I must be just, I'm doing great.
Hell yeah. It's the Sunday show. It's the flagship show of the entire network. It's the show that people watch every day, but especially the day that it's on. And it's a show where anybody can call in and ask questions of two atheists who are very strong and very vocal in their opinions for a living. As we do shows like this more and more, and as I continue to post stuff online and grow my own channels and everything, I am constantly shocked by how many believers out there, how many theists, how many creationists, how many flat earthers, how many anti-choice people, how many transphobes, how many I lumped in a political opinion there with all the scientific ones. Are just like we take political calls in the show sometimes, and it's just like all these people that I interact with in my comment sections that appear to have never actually had a serious conversation with anybody who didn't already agree with them. When I talk to Christians in that visit my videos and talk about how evolution requires some sort of magic or miracle or something, or how a random chance and slow change can't make whole new limbs and eyeballs, and why do you have faith in Darwin? Or when I talk to people who talk about how climate change isn't real because to the hubris to assume we could change and control the weather, or the idea that the planet always warms and cools and this is just natural cycles, or something like the things that I hear that are really, really low level ideas that come from a place. It sounds mean to say a place of ignorance, but really it is just a place of, you've listened to what people you already agree with say. You listen to what your pastor says. You listen to what the news presenter of your favorite network says, and you haven't had a real conversation about it. And even if you were to walk away from that conversation still believing the way you believed, at least you would be more enriched and better off for having a little bit of a discussion about what your beliefs really are. As you can tell, I'm not used to being overwhelmingly antagonistic, but I'd like today to kind of poke a little bit and encourage people to call in and give it a shot. If you have a strong belief in a god or gods, or then in some sort of cosmic divine morality that you think is real, or that the God, especially of the Bible, because that's the one that we're surrounded by, is true or trustworthy or good, or if you think that something in the major theme in science, evolution, abiogenesis, the age of the earth, climate change, Big Bang, pick your favorite, isn't true because something that some major overarching thing that you have a hang up on, if you listen to people like the Kent Hovind and Ken Ham and oh god, all the other ones that I can't even tell you, Stephen Meyer and Michael Behe and all these other charlatans that try to spew a bunch of hateful nonsense, Matt Powell and the rest, and you think that they're making good points. This is your chance to call in and have a polite and usually pleasant conversation. It's pleasant. Our conversations are as pleasant as you make them. Unless you try to be, some sort of a lying lie pants. I don't know. I'm bad at being antagonistic. I just want people to call and have conversations. I get so many freaking comments all the time from people telling me how they could trounce me in a debate, and then they never freaking call. This is my bad cop today that you're seeing. It's great. I'm doing a wonderful job. we've got a great show lined up for you today, as long as there are callers. I can see here on the we already got a couple of people calling in and lining up, and I see here on the chat poll that 3% of everyone in the world said that they are atheists and they will call in. That's like, what's that, like 240 million people, I believe, because that's our audience. Is
it's at least 5.
It's got to be at least 5. And so like that's tens of thousands, maybe millions of people that have said that they will call in. And so this is your chance to give us a shout and to present your best argument for your God, or what else, and tell us what you believe and why. We're going to start off with a call that, honestly, I was going to say it could go a couple of ways, because who knows what this means. But looking at the past calls, I'm a little bit more confident in how I think it's going to go. We've got Alfred, pronouns he, him, calling in from Tenacious Xylophones, who says not all parts of the Bible have equal worths in the eyes of Jews and Christians. Let's dig into that minefield. Alfred, you're on the line with Forrest and Matt. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you guys?
Never had a bad day.
Well, anyways.
Bad, but thanks for asking.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, if I may start, and issue a slight correction. I've heard you guys refer to God's chosen people as Jews living in situations predating the Babylonian exile. Generally, they're not referred to as Jews until after the time of the exile. So it's anachronistic to say, like, the Jews.
Just to be clear,
left Egypt.
I don't know what I'm talking about. Like, okay, so you're saying that's what, okay. I don't think I've ever said God's chosen people are the Jews or anything like that. If I had, it would have been in passing. But if you're saying the people who left
I'm
Egypt,
just saying to say the Jews left Egypt is anachronistic. Yes.
Alfred, do you think it matters at all in these conversations about whether or not God existed, whether we say Jews or Hebrews or ancient Israelites? Why are you starting with a correction that I find to be pedantic and irrelevant instead of actually defending what you believe?
It's just a slight correction.
I don't need a correction. I didn't open up the phone line so that you could come in and tell me what your pedantic nitpick was.
Why would it be salient?
I didn't mean it as a slight. You know more about the Bible than I do. Okay?
So is it just a throwaway thing Alfred, you just wanted to throw out there?
Alfred, why are you bothering to call in with anything other than here's what I believe and why?
What? Do you want me to get to that?
Yes, that's what we have wanted for 20 fucking years.
Okay. So I'll make my point. I'll start with, so I don't think the joke's too funny. The point is that I could tell this joke to other Catholics and they would get it. And the joke is, there's a covert Christian living in the Soviet Union. They put the Bible under the bed. And,
Alfred, I'm sorry, but your phone just went into digitized mode or something, and you're breaking up, so I can't hear your joke.
Yeah, could you try it one more time, please?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, it just was real crackly. Go on ahead.
Okay. So the joke goes like this. There's a guy in the Soviet Union, a covert Christian. The Bible's under the ban, and he's finding other covert Christians, and to each Christian he finds, he'll give them a page of the Bible. And the punchline of the joke is the guy who gets a page from Leviticus. And I could tell this joke to Catholics, and they would think it's funny. And
no, they wouldn't.
I assume.
Well, I mean,
you don't understand?
Maybe I misheard it. One person got a page from Leviticus. Is getting a page from Leviticus like a phrase? I might just be very stupid.
No, the point is he has a Bible, and to each Christian he meets, he gives a page of the Bible for spiritual edification. Some people get, and the joke, well, wouldn't you rather prefer to get a page from the Sermon on the Mount than a page describing how you sacrifice your bull? That's the subtext of the joke. And Catholics get it. I suspect 90% of Protestants.
That is an absolutely awful joke that has
I don't know.
nothing funny
not
about
even a joke.
It's not a joke.
What's the point, Alfred? I think we're going to disagree on what a joke is. What's the point? What are you getting at?
The point is, don't you feel bad for the guy who got a page from Leviticus?
No.
No. I mean,
Okay,
I guess
right.
insofar as like I feel bad for anybody who's going to look at a Bronze Age sex manual and try to take any deep spiritual meaning out of it. That yeah, I have an issue with that. But like the idea that anyone's going to say I can look, see the problem here, Alfred, is that you called this a joke, and now I'm going to have to read way too hard into it to answer your question, and it's going to get less funny. Like this is a lame situation you put me in.
So, well, I think preface my joke by saying I don't think it's too funny. The point was that I could tell the joke and Catholics would get it. Okay. So
I'm not convinced that Catholics would get it. This is so frustrating.
They did.
Because this is so incredibly frustrating because you know what part of the Bible is, the begats. That would be the sucky part to get.
Oh, yes.
The begats. Oh, yeah. Okay.
So
yeah,
basically,
I wouldn't want that page either.
Basically, now we've been on here for 5 minutes, and you decided to start with a pedantic correction that isn't really relevant, and then move on to a joke that isn't a joke and isn't funny. After you said that you were going to get on to your points. So what's the point?
Okay, the point is, and I think you understand this, that for Christians and Jews...
I'll shut up.
There's just
Sorry?
let him do it. No, it's fine. Go. Just go.
It's the number of callers that say they're going to get to a point and then keep interjecting preamble. And the point is, and I think you're going to understand it, but the point is, and I'm not sure if I'm saying this right, the point is, and I'm pretty confident that you'll just get to the fucking point.
Okay. So you're on record as saying the New Testament is worse than the Old Testament, but you'll often ask Christians, does the Bible condone slavery as some kind of slam dunk question. I remember one guy said the Old Testament does, and that really upset you, Matt. And I remember you saying, why couldn't you just say yes?
Okay, I'm muting you, Alfred. I don't need you to give me a history lesson of all the things that I've said or not said. Yes, I'm on record as saying the New Testament is worse than the Old Testament because the New Testament clearly advocates for infinite torture, whereas the Old Testament doesn't necessarily. The Jewish idea of an afterlife isn't necessarily one of eternal punishment because it talks about just going to sleep with your fathers. It's not particularly clear. Would you please, for the love of whatever sanity I have remaining, get to the point?
I want to interject really quickly before we move forward. Is just like you're saying like you said that the slavery thing was like some slam dunk question. It kind of is, considering the fact that the New Testament never ever at any point denounces slavery or says that slavery is bad or shouldn't happen or anything like that. I think they did. And especially considering just how many other random little trivial rules the entire Bible throws out. That is definitely one that should have been in there. But I
think it could have gone either way without saying
if
that
you believe
slavery is wrong.
If you believe in the New Testament, hold on.
No, I disagree, and I think that's an idiotic
especially. Yeah, it doesn't go without saying, especially when in the first part of the book, God himself tells you how to own slaves. It doesn't go without saying that he changed his mind. It's double, especially considering the fact that it says not a jot or tittle of the law changes till all things come to pass, and I've come to enforce the law, not change it, and all this other stuff. So, like,
and I don't know what's meant by that.
You don't know what's meant
you're
by
saying
the
you
law
don't even
isn't
understand
changing?
your Bible? No wonder you don't think it needs clarification.
No. When Jesus says, "I have not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it," it's not. Does he mean the ideals that are set forth at the beginning of Genesis? I think that's what he's getting at. He's not getting at every little piece of legislation is in full effect. It wasn't at the time Jesus lived and spoke.
I am completely bored with your ignorant assumptions because you acknowledge, I don't mean ignorant as an insult. I'm saying you say you don't know what he means, and then you immediately go on to speculate because the normative understanding of what he means and what has traditionally been understood by the church and what is there on a plain reading doesn't fit with what you think. And you're the person who doesn't think that Jesus should have said, hey, slavery's wrong. I know that some of you got this word that I want you to have slaves and I'm allowing you to enslave people, and I told you how much you should pay for them, and I told you how you should beat them and when to stop beating them. But you don't think that Jesus needs a clarification. I'm completely unimpressed with both your Bible knowledge and your ability to tell a joke and your ability to discern when something needs to be made clear. So let me ask you this. Is God opposed to slavery?
Yes.
How do you know?
How do you know?
And why does the Bible say the opposite?
Again, different parts of the Bible have more value in the eyes of Jews and Christians. That was the point that I came in to call.
I'm sorry.
I
asked you whether or not God was okay with slavery. I said, is God opposed to slavery? You say yes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where does it say that in the Bible?
It doesn't.
Cool.
Well, Jesus does say.
Does the Bible give the impression that God is okay with slavery by specifically codifying who to enslave, how to enslave them, how much to pay for them, and how you must treat them?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
Does the Bible specifically give instructions for who to enslave, how to enslave them, how much to pay, and how to treat them?
For a certain time and context, yes.
No, it doesn't say anything about a certain time or context, but even if it did...
That's how you understand every book you read.
No, I'm sorry. Please stop interrupting me when you're stupid and wrong. Okay. If you say that God is opposed to slavery, how do you know that?
I don't have all the answers. I don't have the answer to that question.
Then you don't have any answer worth talking to, because you're going to say that God is opposed to slavery, and I'm going to point out that the Bible says the opposite specifically. And you're going to say, well, that was only for a certain time and place. Okay. And then you're going to say, well, I don't have all the answers. All right. Last question from me, Alfred, and then I'm going to take a break. Mm-hmm. And that is this. What time and place was slavery morally correct?
It was never correct.
Then why would the Bible advocate something for a certain time and place, even though that's not what it says, if it's not morally correct?
Advocate is too loaded of a word for me to really answer with a yes or no.
I'm sorry. Would you like me to go read the fucking passages to you that you haven't read and don't understand?
It's part of a lower canon for me. That's my point. Some passage
you're
in
above
Exodus,
it. You're above it, but you have no grounding for being above it because the Bible doesn't support your view that God's opposed to slavery.
Jesus, in his grace, abrogated all that Old Testament barbarism.
Where?
Where?
Where? Name one fucking verse where Jesus says slavery is immoral.
There's a passage in the Gospel of Luke where Jesus says, I have come to set liberty.
I'm sorry, your phone's breaking up as badly as your brain. Where does Jesus say that slavery is immoral?
Can you not demean me like that, please? Okay.
No, I will demean you just as much as is deserved by the fact that you are dishonest in conversation. You say that God's opposed to morality, but you can't give a reason why.
You shouldn't do that. It's wrong.
Don't you fucking tell me what's wrong. I decide what's wrong. Allowing you to come in and spew misinformation deceitfully about what the Bible does or doesn't say, I find that to be grossly immoral.
I'm trying to be honest.
I don't have to read your mind. I ask you questions, and you repeatedly fail to answer them.
Also, Alfred, how can you say you're not being dishonest when a second ago... No, hold on. How can you say you're not being dishonest when just a moment ago you said that the God of the Bible does condone slavery, does say to do it, never says that slavery is wrong, and yet you know that the God of the Bible is anti-slavery, but you don't know how you know, you just know. Like, how is that not being wholly dishonest? To just say you believe God says slavery is bad, even though you have a book that repeatedly says the opposite, but you just know. That's dishonesty.
Because there's a tradition of Jews and Christians coming together who work to reinterpret the Bible. There are certain foundational passages like love your neighbor as yourself. That is incompatible with slavery, and you know that.
It absolutely isn't. It absolutely is not. Considering the fact that slavery was
you don't know what word neighbor means in that context.
Exactly. Slavery was enshrined, practiced, defended
And now
by
context matters.
Bible-believing Christians. We had no context has always mattered, dude. The thing is,
Yes.
here in the United States, the Christians were the ones who were fighting, defending slavery, saying that slavery is the natural state of all of mankind, using the
They
curse
also
of Ham to
abolished
say
slavery.
that African people. Some Christians did, yes, because there was a
Yes,
big
there was
fight
no one else
between
too.
Christians.
Yes, that's
Hold
point
the
Tim Harris
fuck
makes.
on, Alfred. You've got to quit interrupting us. We're trying to tell you why what you're saying is such a problem, because it's very clear that you have a one-dimensional argument here. Yes, there were some Christians in this country who were fighting against slavery. A huge proportion of them were not, and were actually defending slavery because of Christianity. They were defending slavery because of their Christianity, because of their belief in God. They had the Slaves' Bible, which was a specifically edited Bible that was used to convert slaves to Christianity and teach them that slavery is their natural condition ordained by God. We had slave owners who were Christians and were defending slavery because of Christianity. That was a fact. Now, also, there were some Christians that were fighting against it, for sure. The whole time there were. But that was because of their specific interpretation. The same way that you are now saying that you have to take this passage about love thy neighbor, which the slave owners used to defend slavery, and you have to use it a different way to defend not slavery, and say that this actually technically means that God is anti-slavery, despite the fact that he has overtly said that he wants you to have slaves and told you how to do it. He actually didn't mean any of that. It's actually this other thing. And the point that we're trying to get across to you is that if this God is really so big and so perfect and so smart and so magical and so wonderful, he could have just fucking said, don't own humans as slaves. He could have just said that. He says several times not to eat shellfish. He says not to trim your hair and your beard. He says not to own a fabric, wear clothing of mixed fabrics. He tells you who you can marry. He tells you how you can have sex. You are gonna have to wait until I am done, sir. He tells you all of these different things about what to do. If you can actually be honest with what you're saying, you'll have longer. But if you say something ridiculous that we have to cut you off, then yeah, we're going to cut you off. Because you are the caller on our show, and it's our job to make sure that the conversation is productive and that you don't get to just spew a bunch of nonsense. The issue is that you are demanding that we reinterpret a reinterpretation of a reinterpretation of your preferred version of the preferred translation of the preferred Bible that is used in your preferred church and your preferred religion and your preferred tradition of Christianity with over 40,000 denominations. It is all your preference that you are now putting onto this, trying to wash over the dramatic, horrific history of your religion. Can we mute him so I don't
have to hear him sigh?
It's really fucking rude. That is the point, is that you are whitewashing the history of your religion in order to try to make this point that God is actually believing things that he has never said and has actually said the opposite of. That's bullshit, dude. Now you may respond, as long as it's polite and productive.
Okay. I don't have time to fact check all that. All I'll say is that, there were a lot of things that were ascribed to me that I don't hold. I'm just going to get to my point that there are, in the New Testament, when it's in Mark 12, a scribe goes up to Jesus, he asks him, teacher, what is the most important law? And Jesus doesn't say, no. All scripture is inspired by God. He says, I'll tell you. And he recites the Shema, love the Lord your God. He says to love your neighbor as yourself. And that conversation, it doesn't just go back to Jesus. It's been had thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of times between Jews, maybe some Christians. There is an understanding that you guys don't seem willing to acknowledge, that not all parts of the Bible have the same value in our eyes. And even in the New Testament, there's a passage, an obscure passage.
I'm going to have to interrupt you there immediately.
Sorry.
I've let you talk for a minute. I have to interrupt that. When you say in our eyes, who are you talking about specifically?
I'm just speaking generally Christians and Jews.
Okay. Despite the fact that, as I mentioned a minute ago, there are over 40,000 denominations of Christianity. And we get plenty of callers on the show that talk about how literally every word of the Bible is literally exactly true at plain reading, and that any interpretation like that is wrong.
Yeah, they think the Bible is God.
And also
the fact
that, as I just mentioned, a moment ago, Also, the fact that I just mentioned a minute ago that you are arguing a very modern perspective on this that fits your comfort and is not what has been argued for this for thousands of years. For as long as this thing's been around, there have been horrific interpretations of this thing. Many of them, yes, progress, which goes against what the Bible says about the law being eternal and never changing, and not a jot nor tittle of the law will change until all things have come to pass. What you mean by progress is that you are now reinterpreting your preferred version of your preferred translation of your preferred style of your preferred book in your preferred denomination of Christianity that is different than the way that Jesus said it, if he ever existed and said these things, different than the way God said it, if indeed he ever said those things. Different than all of these things, different than the other millions and billions of Christians before you that have interpreted it differently. You're just giving us your opinion. You're not giving us facts.
He also doesn't know the Bible because it's not Mark 12. That's Matthew 22. The passage in Mark 12 is a different thing, but.
Oh, sorry. Well, I said you know the Bible better than me.
That's a fact. And so the Bible advocates for slavery and never specifically advocates against it. And yet you've reached the conclusion that God is opposed to slavery. What is your argument for knowing that God is opposed to slavery? Has God said this anywhere?
There are a number of passages which you can read that put him against slavery. And
like what?
There are no passages in the Bible at all that are opposed to slavery or where God is saying anything at all about slavery being immoral. When the Bible says love thy neighbor, that doesn't mean, that means fellow Christian, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Or at least that's how it was understood for a long time. Modern Christians might not say it.
No.
That's the major Christian interpretation for a long time.
Because Jesus said that I've come only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, and all these other passages go along. But you can sit here and try to respin that all you interrupt me one more fucking time. I double dog dare you. You can try to spin that as many different ways as you want. But if you can give me one verse where God says slavery is immoral, I am opposed to slavery, thou should not enslave thy fellow man, irrespective of where he comes from. I
can't.
I'll turn the show over to you.
You know, I can't dance to your little mazurka. It does not exist, not explicitly. I get that.
You can't dance. Instead of saying you can't dance to my little mazurka, you could be honest and say, you know what, Matt? You should be honest and say, you know what, Matt? You're correct. The Bible doesn't say that. And therefore, my justification for thinking that God is opposed to slavery is blah, blah, blah. But you don't do that because you can't. Because you're thinking based on your gut feels and not about what the book actually says.
You call it inner light. I have a question. How do you determine which passages actually hold the weight? Because you keep saying, well, these old barbaric laws don't actually hold any, and it's different for these two. How do you determine which ones are true and which ones aren't? When God says, here's how you own slaves, and you say, that's not real. Who is?
It's a religious tradition, billions of people reading the Bible and a growing consensus. It's almost like you guys are democracy people, right? And we understand, like, 1 Timothy 5:23.
I'm sorry.
Paul's talking.
I'm sorry. Is the Bible the Bible the word of God? Yes or no?
Yes.
Is the Bible opposed to slavery? Yes or no?
Not explicitly, no.
Yeah. So
why
like
is it
us be?
Hang on. Does God know everything that's ever going to happen?
Yes.
So God knew you were going to be having this conversation with me, and he did not provide you with any ammunition to back up your perception of what he's opposed to. Why is that?
I know you're a sophisticated guy. Look, I don't have all the answers.
I don't need you to, no. I don't need you to tell me what kind of guy I am or whether I'm sophisticated or not. Here's the undisputable facts. You're convinced that God exists. You're convinced that God is opposed to slavery. You're convinced that the Bible does not come out against slavery and, in fact, expressly permits it. And you believe that God knew you and I were going to have this conversation. And so my question stands. Why didn't God give you any useful ammunition for defending your perception of who he is? Is it because that's not who he is? Is it because he doesn't exist? Or do you have some other reason?
I don't know.
Good. That's a great answer. You should keep doing that instead of pretending like you do know. So when somebody says, is God opposed to slavery? You should say,
please?
wait, I'm not. Okay,
you
accuse
just
me of
said.
mind reading one more fucking time. Here, listen to me very carefully. You should do this more often. When someone says, is God opposed to slavery? Your answer should be what?
In the Bible, not explicitly.
No. Your answer should be, I don't know, because you don't.
Mm-hmm. At least be honest about it.
Okay.
I have some questions that, like, there's a couple of things you said there at the end. You asked if we are like democracy people. Are you a democracy person, Alfred? Do you like democracy?
That's irrelevant right now. I'm still trying to make my point.
You asked us. No, hold on. You asked us. I'm just asking you the same question. I'm just curious, because that's a bizarre thing to ask somebody. I'm just curious. Do you think that democracy is a good thing? Are you on board with that?
Do you feel entitled to my response? Is it your property? I don't really.
I'm just asking you a question, dude. It's bizarre that you don't want to answer that.
You on mute. I'm going to put you on mute, Alfred, and I'm going to explain something to you. We have a show that you called into. The conceit behind the show is that you're supposed to call in and tell us what you believe and why. And you can ask us questions about what we believe and we will answer them. But we should be allowed to ask you questions about what you believe, because the whole point of this show is to get you to call in and explain what you believe and why. If your response to that is, do you feel that you're entitled to my answers? I'm going to ask you one question, and that's this. Do you feel that you are entitled to one more second on the air if you refuse to participate with the purpose of the fucking show?
No.
I agreed. I can't handle that. The idea that, like, I'm going to ask you some random off the wall. Oh, he hung up. Dude, that's great. The idea that he's going to ask some random off the wall question and then, like, not even want to entertain it. What a weird question to dodge. I had several other. I'm erasing my whiteboard. I had several other questions.
It might have been my fault. If in fact you didn't hang up and you want to call back and actually have a discussion where you answered the questions that you're asked with Forrest, I'd be happy to have you call back. There was not a ban or anything else. I was trying to close windows and you disappeared. I don't know if you hung up or I hung up or something else happened, but it's funny that the timing perfectly lined up like that. It's almost like God stepped in to deny you a second.
I don't know if you heard my voice like squeaking during that call. I've got a weird throat thing going on right now, but I'm going to make it through this show. We're going to get there.
Sweet.
We've got, let's move on to another call that sounds really fun. We'll see how this one goes. Guys, honestly, the what's on the call screen here sounds interesting. We've got, I'm guessing this is pronounced Moises. Please tell me if that's wrong. It's got an I in the middle. I was going to say Moses, but it looks like Moises. Calling in from Crazy Albatrosses, who is a theist who says that I believe God is real because it's inherently obvious to humans. I want to know what that means because there's a lot there. First off, hi, welcome to the line. You're on Forrest and Matt. And also, how do you pronounce your name? I want to make sure I'm not disrespecting you by saying it wrong.
It's Moises, but let me jump in this car for you don't hear a compressor.
Sure. I appreciate that. Awesome. I wanted to make sure I was saying it right. Moises.
All right. And my argument for God, honestly, I kind of already forgot, but let me remember. I called in before. Just saying. I'm that guy.
Yeah, I see it says
argument for God.
Yeah, argument for God basically is, I I feel it's just a word, and
I agree with
more
that.
people on Earth believe in God. So like, why would we create new groups like an atheist group?
So just to be clear, like you understand, surely you understand that not everyone believes in a God, right? You get that that's just a fact that some people don't believe in God.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. What would you call a group of people who don't believe in God as opposed to the people who do? How would you differentiate them? What word would you use to lump those people together?
I guess an atheist, right? Yeah.
Right. So we're not
Yeah.
creating an atheist group. Atheism is just a thing that exists when people don't believe. Every single human is born an atheist. You don't believe in God at the beginning, and you are taught about God later. So every single human is an atheist at some point in their life, and then maybe they change their mind later. And sometimes they go back, and sometimes they never go in the first place. And that's just what you describe people. The second thing is you said that more people believe in God than don't. Sure.
Uh-huh.
Which God? Because there's lots of different God offers. Even just in Christianity, there's tens of thousands of different versions. So there's lots and lots of different gods out there. Just saying people believe in God, lots of them, you understand, surely, that that doesn't actually mean anything, right?
Huh. Well, yeah, I guess so. And I kind of realized
Yeah.
my argument was bad when the other guy was talking, to be honest.
Well, that's good.
Was-
So do you have a different one
so-
that you'd like to present?
Yeah, we had a different question. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What do you think about Jesus? Do you think he was real, and why do you think he did what he did?
I don't know. I think that there's a lot of scholars out there that are pretty sure that there was some guy named something roughly approximating Jesus, probably more like Yeshua, but whatever. But there was a dude who was like the inspiration for those stories at that time. I don't know that for sure. I haven't reviewed any of that. It's not really in my interest. But what I can say is even if there was a guy named Jesus who was around 2,000 years ago in Palestine doing, talking to people about God and about whatever, even if that guy is real, that doesn't mean anything else about the Bible is true. So like if I can prove to you, for example, that Abraham Lincoln is real, that doesn't mean that he was a vampire hunter like the Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter book says, because vampires aren't real. And so like if we can prove that Jesus is real, that doesn't mean that he can cure the sick or heal the blind or can walk on water, raise the dead, is the son of God, doesn't mean there is a God for him to be the son of, doesn't mean any of that other stuff. Just means there was a guy named Jesus. Matt, you have your hand up. What's going on? What's your question?
Yeah. I'm curious if the caller's familiar with C.S. Lewis's argument that's often summed up as liar, lunatic, or Lord.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
No, I'm not.
Are you familiar with that? Sure.
No.
So C.S. Lewis, who wrote The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, was a Christian. And the entirety of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is an allegory for Christianity. Aslan, the great lion, is there representing Jesus. But in his writings outside of that book, one key thing in the Bible with regard to Christianity is when Jesus says, "Who do you say that I am?" And Christians have been using that to say, this is the most important question and it's what you just asked, which is, who do you think Jesus was? And C.S. Lewis's response was either he's a liar because he gives the clear impression that he is divine, and if he's not divine, then he was a liar, or a lunatic because he may have been crazy, or he is what he claimed to be and is therefore Lord. It's a neat little piece of alliteration, but there is at least one other option. The fourth option that also starts with an L, which is the one that I personally prefer, is legend. So liar, lunatic, Lord, and legend. I have no idea if Jesus in fact existed or if we're reading stories that are about someone else or some collection of someone else. I have no idea whether or not he did the things that the Bible reports or not, because these aren't eyewitness accounts. They're not firsthand accounts. We don't have any original autographed copies. We just have the written down versions of stories that were passed around orally. It's entirely possible, and it doesn't matter whether he existed or not. He can still be a legend, whether he existed and, you know, had legendary stuff attributed to his life, or if he didn't exist and a legend was built up. But I am unconvinced that he is in fact divine, or was in fact divine. I don't even know for sure if there was a person there. And so when people are like, oh, what do you think of Jesus? I find most of what he's supposed to have said incredibly unimpressive, if not actually problematic. I did an entire video series going through the Sermon on the Mount, verse by verse, to show where it is absurd, where it is reasonable and good, and where it is a bad thing. And he basically encourages Christians to revel in and celebrate in their own persecution. So if somebody's being mean to you, it's because you're following Jesus. If something's gone wrong in your life, it's because Satan is coming to attack you because you were doing right for God. Instead of the actual answer, which is maybe people just don't like you because of something you actually did that deserved not to be liked. So when somebody says, who do you think Jesus was? My answer is a legend.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah. If I could, I would like to share a theory that I have, like why Jesus did what he did.
Sure. What did he do? What is it that he did, and how do you know he did it?
Honestly, I've never even really read the Bible. I kind of just seen a lot of documentaries and stuff like that.
Can I ask you? I do want to hear what you're about to say. So please don't let me detract from you for too long. But I do want to ask you. You are a Christian though. I'm just assuming because of where you're calling from. Yeah.
Nah. I grew up in a Jehovah's Witness family, but
okay.
But then my parents never took me to church, so I kind of just was a free thinker. Yeah.
Okay. That's fine. So, like, are you not? You're calling in as a theist now, so you are claiming that you do believe that a God exists. What God is it that you believe in?
Well, really, as of right now, I don't believe in God, but I like to think that there is a God named Jehovah, you know. But I don't.
I don't understand how those two statements go together. You don't believe that there is a God, but you like to think that there is? What does that mean? Are you saying like just wishful thinking? Are you saying you're trying to figure it out?
Yeah, just wishful thinking, but
why would you wish?
I don't know if there's God.
I'm curious. Why would you wish for there to be a God if you don't know who that God is? So, for example, the God of the Bible not only advocates for slavery, but holds people accountable from birth with inherited sin, and has constructed a scenario where he gets off on blood sacrifices and the literal smell of burning flesh, and then sends himself down to sacrifice himself to himself to do some blood magic so that he can forgive people and send the rest of them off for eternal torment, when the only unforgivable sin, the denial of the Holy Spirit, is basically an amplified version of I'm not convinced. What is good about a God that makes you wish he was real?
I'm not even too sure about that. Can I skip that and move to a different topic?
Sure.
Yeah, I guess this will be. We'll try this and we'll move on.
Okay, good, for sure. I was gonna say about Jesus. I feel like that dude was just a dude who Well, have you heard of the theory that his mom wasn't actually a virgin and she was raped by a Roman soldier and she just didn't tell anybody, and Joseph kept it?
I mean, I don't know. Like that? I don't know that she exists either, but it does make a lot more sense to say that some girl told a lie than to say that there was, this immaculate magical conception where God raped this girl. Because, like, at the end of the day, if you read the Bible, that's what happened. Is that if you can believe that some Roman soldier raped this girl, or you can read the Bible, which says God raped her.
Meanwhile, we don't even know that she existed or did anything. It's like people say, ooh, you know that story about Jesus walking on the water? Well, maybe it was, the water was frozen just a little below the surface. And so there was light water on there. And so maybe that's how he did it. And yet so they're basically trying to come up with a rational explanation for something that we haven't even shown happened at all. So why are we trying to come up with speculative explanations for how a young girl became pregnant when we don't know if the girl existed or that she became pregnant, and we have no ability to investigate at all? I will say that saying she became pregnant through the magical instantiation of a Holy Spirit coming in and impregnating her is more ridiculous than that she was pregnant either through consensual or non-consensual sex with, her husband or a soldier. We don't need to bother explaining things until we have some reason to think they actually happened.
Okay. And can I ask you guys one more question? Really big one?
Yeah.
Where do you think happens after we die? Like, you go to a different body, or maybe, or or you think just repeats itself over and over again?
Let's ask you. When you say you go to a different body, what do you mean by you?
Who you are, because I am me. I'm the person. Me. The person who sees.
What produces who you are? Where does that come from?
From your actions and stuff. From what you do in life.
Right. And so I'm not trying to be pedantic here, but just bear with me for a second. What produces that? From where do you derive your actions? What causes you to be as one type of person versus another type of person?
Well, your emotions and your environment.
Yeah, I would say your education and your upbringing, and I think your emotions do play a part into it. But what I'm getting at here is that when you talk about who you are, if you ask me, I would say that what you're getting at here is the product of your brain and your upbringing and your family and your surroundings and your political beliefs and your ideals. Excuse me. There's a lot there that you can point to. Not one bit of it is transferable outside of a body, outside of a person, from one person to another, anything like that. So you're asking me what happens after we die. The world keeps on turning, other people keep on living, and we do not. The person that I am today is what you're seeing, what is currently interacting with you is the electrochemical activity of my brain that is producing emergent effects such as consciousness and intention and will and speech and causing my muscles to move and all these things. All of this is just because of what my brain is. And if my brain were to be changed, if someone were to come lobotomize me or kick me in the head or something like that, I would be a different person. I would behave differently. I would think differently, or I would not think at all. And so there's no central immutable part of me that is transferable outside of my body or from one body to another or anything like that. So when I die, my body is going to decay. I would like it to be eaten by plants and animals and fungi because I've been eating them for 32 years and that seems fair. And everybody else is going to keep on living and eventually I'll be forgotten and that'll be just fine.
But you don't think if a raccoon ate you and then it digested maybe your soul or something and then they had babies, one day you'd be a raccoon?
Are you a future distant cow because your grandma ate a hamburger one day?
Well, how could a raccoon eat my soul? Where is the soul such that a raccoon?
I was skipping over the soul thing.
Okay.
No, it's fine. I was going to say that's a whole other thing. Is that as I just said, I don't believe there's anything such as a soul. I don't have any evidence for anything called a soul. But I think ignoring that,
I think the soul is the most obviously false concept that's ever been promoted by religion. Every single version of the soul is either some nebulous thing where they try to store human characteristics, or if you take what do people mean by the soul, and you pull out each one of the characteristics, every single one of those characteristics that is real is an identifiable function of a functioning brain, and the ones that aren't an identifiable functioning part of a functioning brain, there's no demonstration that they're real at all. The notion that your soul can exist outside of your body. That's not a real thing that's ever been demonstrated. And so when you remove all those features that are about the brain, what's left? I don't, but even if there was a soul, and even if a raccoon could eat my soul, that doesn't mean that my soul becomes a baby raccoon.
Is that the only way for it to be trained? Because what if the raccoon never has any kids? Do you poop the soul? Does the soul become part of the raccoon? Is the raccoon now a two-souled creature? Does the soul evaporate and go somewhere else? Is the soul excreted in some way? Like, there's a million questions, Moises, and it all comes down to the fact that we don't think souls are real because we don't have any evidence for them. So when you die, you die, and you try to live a good enough life. That's not a big deal. I think it was Mark Twain who said that death at the end of a good life is like sleep at the end of a hard day's work. You're satisfied. You're happy to do it.
For sure. Okay, again.
Yeah.
I
appreciate your call.
All right, I'll let you guys go. All right, take care.
Hey, I appreciate your call. Feel free to call me back anytime, Moises. I think you asked good questions, and I'd love to talk to you again.
Okay,
thanks.
For sure.
Bye-bye. What a nice dude. And see, this is what I'm talking about. I said at the beginning of the show that, like, we get a lot of people like that I've talked to that appear to have never had these kinds of conversations. That's what I mean. I'm not trying to throw shade at anybody by saying you've never talked to an atheist. Like, who wants to talk to me? But like those questions, it kind of just shows that these are things that Moises has never really grappled with. And I think that that's a lack of opportunity rather than a lack of effort. And that's why I'm happy for shows like this. You know what I mean? Because it has enriched my life greatly to get to grapple with these, religious and pseudoscientific claims. It has made me a better thinker to be able to tackle these things and to now be better at noticing similar flaws and problems in other arguments that come along my way. So like, it's an awesome opportunity for everybody to learn and grow and become, a slightly cooler person, I think, to have good conversations like this. We actually did get a call back from Alfred, who I don't know how that call got disconnected, but Alfred did call back, only he's calling from a different location. Last time he called in from Tenacious Xylophones. This time he's calling in from Toasty Xenothairs, talking about warm snuggling armadillos up in here. Yeah. But Alfred is calling back to talk about how not all parts of the Bible are the same and hold the same weight, and we're going to figure out why. Alfred, do you believe in democracy? Do you like democracy?
Sometimes, yes. Why are you prefacing this conversation with that?
Because you never answered the first time, and I want to know.
He asked that you refused to answer the first time.
Yeah, I just want to know. It was such a weird question for you to ask us, and it was especially weird that you refused to answer it. And now it's a little weirder that you're saying sometimes. But like, hey, that's not the point of the call. I just was curious. I have another question for you because we never got to go to all my questions, and I actually erased my whiteboard, but I'll try to remember some of them.
By the way, I didn't hang up. I think Matt accidentally did.
It might have been him. It might also been a glitch because he was closing windows.
But how could you tell whether I did it or God did it?
Okay.
Could have been God.
Please go, Forrest.
Yes. So you repeatedly.
Yeah, all right. I'll let Forrest go, but you don't get to decide when I'm done talking ever.
Sorry, that was a little. I'm sorry.
So you repeatedly said that
Pilate
God
he was
says
interrogating Jesus. Sorry.
Who is interrogating Jesus? What are we doing? It's already weird. It's already weird again. Don't make it weird, Alfred. I want to know, like, weird. You said several times that the Jesus is saying love your neighbors is the negation of the several times where God specifically says keep slaves, y'all. And so God says slaves cool. God says slaves are good. God says
he gives laws sanctioning slavery.
You're gonna have to wait. Okay, so sorry, just that's insane that you would say that. If I tell someone how to rape somebody else, it doesn't matter if I didn't specifically say go rape them. If I'm like, hey, make sure when you rape somebody, you do it this way. That's still fucking evil, Alfred. So God saying, here's how to keep slaves is evil. He doesn't have to say, here, I need you now to go do slavery, even though he did actually say, buy slaves from the heathen around you, and when you do no, because even that what I said was also correct. I'm just pointing out you trying to nitpick also is a ridiculous and just crazy thing for you to do.
Okay.
The point is, what I'm trying to get at is that you repeatedly said in your call that Jesus saying love your neighbor is this negation of all of that. Does it bother
And it's
you
part
at
of a
all
higher canon.
to consider?
Yes.
I'm going to get through this sentence if it kills you. You have repeatedly said that Jesus saying love your neighbor negates the several times when God tells people how to keep slaves and where to buy slaves and how to beat slaves and all these other things that Jesus says loves your neighbor, and that means that all of a sudden magically slavery is no longer condoned by the by the God of the Bible. My question to you, Alfred, is do you understand that Jesus said love your neighbors, not your property? And that slaves in the Bible are repeatedly referred to as property to be passed down to your children. So if I tell you to love your neighbor, I am not telling you to love your vacuum. And so God says slaves are property to be passed down to your children. Therefore, Jesus saying love your neighbor really doesn't quite broach that gap and doesn't apply there. And yes, that is one of the major arguments that slave-owning Christians used for a very long time. That's my question to you.
I'm sorry. What's the specific question?
The specific question is that Jesus said love your neighbor, but slaves in the Bible are repeatedly and consistently referred to as property. So do you understand why somebody would not believe that Jesus saying love your neighbor means that the Bible is anti-slavery and that actually he's talking about somebody else?
So the concept of property, is that really a concept in the Old Testament? Like, does it explicitly say people are property? They're not people, they're property.
Yes, it does. Yes. Multiple times.
By the way, you didn't catch it earlier, but the passage you were talking about in Mark 12 is the same as the one that's in Matthew 22. I just was checking to see.
It's a parallel passage. It's better in Mark.
But you just went with it. So I was just, because I'm going to get emailed.
I was a little confused.
But it is in Mark. Wow, interrupt me again.
It's already weird. Don't make it
I'm
weird,
trying
Alfred.
to stem off the emails that are going to pretend like Matt didn't know it was also in Mark 12. Yes, I did.
So, yes, the Bible repeatedly and consistently refers to slaves as property. It says they can be passed down to your children as property. They are part of your inheritance. They are objects. They are farming equipment.
Leviticus 25 verses 44 through 46.
Okay.
There you go. That's one of the examples.
Sorry.
Again, the question was, do you understand that that's a difference, a major difference in the mind of people who are going to defend slavery? In fact, it is a difference that we have had put to us on this show by people who defend biblical slavery.
Yes, I realize people will make that argument. My point is that Jesus, in his time, there was an understanding that the Torah was written at a time when we were in power. And they knew that, well, we're under Roman occupation. A lot of that legislation does not apply anymore. We cannot enforce that. And they were learning to reinterpret things. So like even the Italian, the eye for an eye, at the time that was revolutionary. And we don't have to get into that.
No,
even in the time of Jesus.
So
hold
on,
revolutionary
because that's
good.
No, it's not. That's from the Code of Hammurabi had that way before the Bible did. And
it wasn't
also,
mitigating law. Okay, I could be wrong.
It absolutely was. And also, the issue is that we're not talking about some random Jewish law that some Israelites wrote down and decided this was because they're in power and they can do the whatever. This is in the Bible. It is God speaking. God says, "Hey, stop, bitches! I'm God." No, dude, I will read the whole passage to you from start to finish.
I dare you.
It's insane.
I asked you specifically for the context under which slavery is morally permissible, and you said there isn't any. Then stop accusing us of taking it out of fucking context when we're not. I'll read you what the passages say. Both thy bondmen and thy bondmaids, which thou shalt have, shall be of the heathen that surround you. Of them ye shall buy your bondmen and bondsmaids. Moreover, of the children of the strangers that do sojourn among you, of them you shall buy, and of their families that are with you, which they begat in your land, and they shall be your possessions. you shall take them as inheritance for your children after you, to inherit them as possessions. They will be your bondmen forever. Don't tell me I'm taking this shit out of context when the Bible specifically says you can enslave these people and they become your property forever that you can pass on to your kids. I'm sorry you don't know the Bible, but don't tell me I'm taking it out of context.
And that's just that
So who do you
version. The
think
New
that
International
passage is
Version
addressed
specifically uses the word, the New International Version specifically uses the word property, as does, I believe, the King James Version
Okay.
actually uses the word property, not
Good to know.
possession.
That
And
passage
to
is
answer your
written to the
question,
ancient Israelites.
and it's from God saying that. And also, it doesn't matter who it's addressed to. That's an evil thing
Yes,
to
it
say.
does.
You
We read a
yourself
book.
recommended.
Audience is everything.
No,
Dude,
it's not.
If does it matter if I just take it out of the Bible? If I say you should own slaves, does it matter who I'm talking to, or is that just an evil thing to tell somebody?
Both matter.
No.
What?
You already acknowledged there is no context under which it is moral, which means if you're saying, oh, that was written to these people in this time and it doesn't apply now, you are suggesting that it was morally correct for those people at that time. But you've already acknowledged that you interrupt me one more fucking time.
Dude, come on.
Okay,
It's
you go ahead,
so
Forrest.
fucking
I'm gonna
rude.
hit chess.
No, it's super rude, Alfred, because like you keep just saying shit that's objectively
dishonest.
obviously not true. And then every time we try to tell you, hey, here's what the book actually says, you're like, oh, well, there's some weird exception. And I think what you're not grappling with is the fact that if this book is actually supposedly the inspired word of God, that this is the smartest creature in the entire universe, so intelligent and so powerful that it made everything in the cosmos, including us, that this fucking dick couldn't understand that there's going to be different ways to interpret this, and that if he tells some people that slavery is good and then vaguely kind of half-ass says that you should love people later, that it might be taken in different ways. And you said yourself, God knows everything that's going to happen. If he knows what slavery is going to be like, and he knows how long it's going to last, he knows that it still persists to this day, and this guy's just like, fuck it, I was kind of vague. I was very clear about owning slaves, but I was vague about not owning slaves, and they should have figured it out by now, and I got nothing to help them. Like, yes, your God is a problem. Your God did something incredibly stupid, or he doesn't fucking exist, and you're reinterpreting a Bronze Age sex manual that was written with the laws of the time, as you are doing.
This is nothing new. We learned
You
to
are doing that
things.
right now. You are doing that right now.
No. I'm drawing on
Jews.
Traditions of interpreting the Bible.
That was one of my other questions from earlier. You said that this is a tradition of interpretation. Does that mean that we today are smarter, better, more moral people than the Christians 200 years ago that had a totally different interpretation of the Bible?
I don't really have an answer for that. I'm just
so then when the Christians
it's a contradictory book.
When the Christians 200 years ago it certainly does. When the Christians 200 years ago were using the Bible to condone slavery, was that more or less moral than your interpretation?
Less.
Okay, so then you can answer the question. You can and can't answer the question. Yes, a hardened heart, whatever that fucking means. But just to be clear, you said a minute ago you can't answer it. You just fucking did. You're saying that your modern interpretation is the more moral correct one than the last one, which would imply that them being very progressive in their time was better than the last interpretation and the last interpretation. So are you saying, I'm just drawing this just to its logical conclusion, that when the Bible was written, it was in its like least moral state, and now, after all this time, it's only gotten more moral over time? Or do you think there are areas where we've gotten less moral in our interpretations? What are you actually saying?
I don't think there's a linear progression from less moral to more moral. I haven't really thought about it. My point is that the Bible, as you know, it's vastly... What? Okay.
Except for the slavery
part. So the Bible is a vastly contradictory book. And Christians and Jews are pretty much forced to focus on passages that cohere, and they ignore contradicting passages, and they write them off as part of a lower canon. This is my whole point. And sometimes passages of the Bible are regarded higher than other passages, sometimes even when they don't contradict each other. Like there's a passage in First
So
Timothy
just to
where
be
Paul
clear,
tells-
sorry,
I
hold
don't
on,
care.
before you give me a sermon, you said that when two passages are contradictory, you have to then write them
Yes.
off as lower canon. Is that a rough approximation of what you're saying?
Yeah, and kind of ignore them. I mean, like the passages you people are bringing up about slavery, I don't even like. I have a vague
Understand? Read.
Yeah. I've
Yeah.
never
Well, the
like
problem
really.
is-
Wow, look at
that's
this.
because you are a believer of convenience. There's no this notion lower canon, higher canon. That's a fiction that you guys
It's important.
invented. No, it's not
dude,
important.
The problem is that just a minute ago, you just said that we write off these things as lower canon when there's a contradiction. But if you remember back to the last call, you yourself admitted there is no point in the Bible that says slavery is wrong, but there's lots of times that say that this is how you do slavery. So there is no contradiction. The Bible's vastly contradictory on a lot of things. Slavery is not one of them. So you are writing this off as
really
lower canon
easy.
because it makes you feel better, not because you have any reason to do so.
Is
I'm not-
Leviticus
this is-
scripture? I'm asking you, Alfred, is Leviticus
Yeah,
scripture?
sure.
Is Deuteronomy scripture?
Yes.
What does 2 Timothy 3:16 say?
All scripture is inspired by God, I guess.
All scripture is given an inspiration of God and is profitable for
Absolutely.
doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness. Your notion that there are higher canon and lower canon is in opposition to what the Bible says about revealed scripture. You are advocating for a heretical position
No, I'm not.
yes, you are, in order to excuse the fact that you don't want to pay attention to the things that are problematic. You're going to say, oh, it's contradictory and we've struggled with some of this stuff, except that you're wrong because the Bible itself says all scripture is God breathed. It doesn't say there's higher canon and lower canon. It doesn't say,
It does.
ooh, you can throw
Can I
out the
get to
stuff
that?
you find uncomfortable.
I think, and I think earlier I said that when Jesus is asked, what is the first commandment? He does not say, no. They're all the word
Jesus
of God.
isn't asked what
And
the
there's a
first
passage-
commandment was. He was asked what the greatest commandment was, not the first.
Well, okay. It depends on which passage you read. Matthew and Mark are slightly different. Matthew uses Mark.
It doesn't matter which one you read as to what it's actually talking about. Nobody's asking what is the first commandment. It's about which
I'm
one's the
pretty
most
sure.
important, the greatest. That's the point.
Mhm.
I don't understand why an atheist has to teach you how to understand your book.
Okay. Well, so in Deuteronomy, and there is precedent for this. In Deuteronomy, it says that, I think it's the commandment, I don't know much about the Old Testament, but it's the commandment to love the
anything
Lord your
else.
God with all, yada, yada, yada. And it says, bind this on your head, wrap it around your wrists. And it's basically saying, like, look, I know there's all that other stuff. This is higher than all of that. That's the subtext. And we're
it's
not
not.
just
It's not. It's
Okay,
see
what
what I
do
what I
you
keep
think it is?
getting back to, Alfred. The issue that I keep getting back to is that you have yet to actually articulate a way, and I've asked a couple of times. You have yet to actually articulate a way that you can decide which parts of the Bible are actually super real and honest and serious, and God really meant it here, and other times where he actually was just kind of kidding around, and it's just allegory, poetry, law of the time, doesn't matter, don't read this part, whatever. The only thing you've consistently relied on is your preference, your comfort level, your own personal morality, which is secularly based, by the way.
It's not me
Like,
making.
I'm gonna put you on mute because I'm sick of tired of fucking telling you to quit interrupting me. It's really fucking rude. Like this, you are calling into our show. We have to interrupt you in order to make a point because there's a delay, and I'm not gonna let you fucking just talk the whole time. But I'm trying to get across to you the frustration that I'm having with this call. The call is going so badly and so weirdly for you because you keep just having this inconsistent narrative of this part of the Bible is absolutely true and it means this one thing. And this part of the Bible, even though it says something completely different than what I'm saying, actually doesn't mean this at all. It's completely bullshit. Don't listen to this. It's lower canon. It's not real. And when we repeatedly ask you, how do you know the difference? It's, well, there's contradictions. There's no contradiction here. Well, Jesus really meant this. Actually, he didn't. He said something completely different. Well, you have to understand this other thing is this is the interpretation. That's not how millions of people interpret it. It's all just you. Alfred. This is Alfred's Bible, Alfred's religion, Alfred's interpretation. It's not actually anything to do with what the Bible actually says, what the vast majority of Christian tradition actually says. It's just you saying what you like and saying God backs you up. It's entirely arrogant and completely selfish, and it makes no fucking difference in the real world. Matt, what are you thinking?
So Deuteronomy 6, beginning at verse 5, does not say anything at all about here's the most important thing, you can ignore the other stuff. It doesn't say anything about a higher canon or lower canon. What it says is, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. The entire purpose of this passage is to say, I have given you the law. Write it on your hearts. Share it with your children. Recite it over and over again. This is a thing. And what are the laws that this is talking about? Well, if you go look at them, it includes slavery. It includes all of the Old Testament laws. You don't get to look at this and go, oh, I know that, 2 Timothy says that, all scripture is God-breathed, but I think there's a higher and lower canon. So let me go see if I can find a verse that makes it look like there's a higher and lower canon. Go all the way back to Deuteronomy to where it says about loving God, because Deuteronomy is specifically saying it is in line with the New Testament's not a jot or tittle of the law will be changed until all these things have come to pass. You, Alfred, are tossing out things that you find inconvenient and then looking for ways to excuse it.
And that really is the long and short of it. And like, honestly, to do that kind of thing and to dance around like these and make excuses for objectively horrific things. It makes sense why you wouldn't like democracy all the time if that's the kind of morality that you're playing with. Anyway, Alfred, we'll bring it back for just a minute. But honestly, we've been on this call twice now, and it's not going anywhere. So, like, do you have anything you want to say to wrap us up? Because, like, I'm kind of just we've been talking in circles this whole time, man. I'm a little over.
This from the time of Jesus, this has been a thing. Some parts of the Bible were just regarded more highly than others, and even Martin the Heretic. As you know, I think Paul teaches about faith. Salvation through faith, Alfred, and then there's the Epistle of James.
Alfred, let God be true and every man a liar. If you're going to start with, since the time of Jesus, people have struggled with all these things. I don't give a fuck. That is not scripture. I don't give a shit if it's true. Scripture. Struggle all you want. The people who are struggling with this are not the ones that are giving the biblical instruction.
It exists with tradition.
I'm muting him again. I already got it. Yeah, dude cannot stop interrupting.
The tradition does not fucking matter. The scripture is the thing that's from God. Here, I'm going to ask you real quickly, Alfred, does the tradition that you're citing, is that tradition from God?
It's the response of people to
Is that tradition from God?
So, yes or no? Yes or no, Alfred? Quit being weird.
Is the tradition from God?
Sometimes it's from God, yes.
Well, how do you know when it's from God?
I don't have all the answers. Sometimes it's an inner light.
You're so full of shit, Alfred. You don't know shit. This time, I am going to hang up on you.
Just literally like, I like this thing, therefore it's God. And I don't like this thing, therefore that's not God. And it doesn't matter what God actually says. No, we're not, dude.
Okay, hang on, Forrest.
Yeah, please, by all means.
This guy just accused me of straw manning him. You have 30 seconds to make your case for me straw manning you, or I will ban you from the show by your phone number forever. You don't get to accuse me of a fallacy, you fucking liar who's been lying about shit the whole time. What's my straw man? Go.
I'll bring him back.
Sorry, I was speaking to Forrest, not you, Matt.
You're not speaking to either of us.
That's straw manning you?
Sorry? Yes.
How?
He said,
okay, what's the straw man? I won't ban you.
I don't have a transcript of what you said, so correct me if I'm not getting it correct.
So you don't know.
I don't have a transcript of what you said. It was something like you pick the parts of the Bible that you like, And that's not what I'm doing. That's not the procedure. That is a straw man.
It's not,
Okay.
because very clearly what you've been doing this entire time, I don't have a transcript either, but I've been awake for the whole call, so I can just repeat some of it back to you, is that you would say, here's this thing that God definitely actually said is about, slavery, for example, the thing we've been talking about this whole time. God specifically says, here's how to own slavery. I'm going to mute you again because you cannot stop interrupting. It's like it's
fucking mute him with a
real
throat
fucking
punch, metaphorically.
So fucking annoying, metaphorically. The thing is that what you keep doing is we'll say, here's where God specifically says, here's how you own slaves. And you say, that's not right, though. God didn't, that he actually is anti-slavery. Is the Bible anti-slavery? Well, no, at least not all the time. Okay, where specifically does God say that slavery is bad? Well, he never says that. But he does say this thing that kind of sort of sounds like that when you interpret it the way that I interpret it. Okay, lots and lots of people throughout history have interpreted it the opposite way. And in fact, that is the longer tradition in your religion. What do you say? Yeah, but they were getting it wrong because this is the more moral interpretation and there's different canons of the Bible. The Bible specifically says not to do that. Yeah, but this is the tradition. This is what we're doing it. Where is it a tradition? Well, you just said God said to do it. Where did God say to do it? He didn't, but you think he did. But like it just over and over and over. And by the way, this isn't a straw man. This is me summarizing and paraphrasing. Over and over, you keep giving us what you want God to say, what you would like the Bible to say. Excuse me, what you would like to hear from the Bible, what you would wish that God were actually saying, and then saying that there's some tradition that says it. Never mind what Scripture actually says. Never mind what God himself actually says. Never mind any of that. Your preferred version of your religion says that this is all not real. It is 100% just your comfort level. If you were to go to a church that was preaching the Bible in the way that it has historically been preached, for example, the KKK, which is a Christian organization. If you went to a KKK church that was talking about why the Bible is super pro-slavery, you would leave and you go to a different church that said something you liked. You are pro your interpretation. You are pro your comfort. You're not pro God.
Really?
You're not pro Scripture. You're not pro anything. You're just doing whatever feels good to you and saying that that's actually what God really meant. And now I am going to straw man you a little bit because it's funny. I noticed on the call screen when it said your past calls that the last time you called in before this was to tell us why you're voting for Trump. And if you can tell me that God said he wants slavery but didn't actually mean it, and actually it makes sense why you would then say, yeah, I know Trump talked about walking out on girls in changing room, but actually he's a good guy and should be the president. That is a bit of a straw man, but it's a fun one. Matt, do you have anything left? Because I'm super fucking done with Alfred.
Oh,
dude is so dishonest.
I'm more than done with Alfred because the problem is this could be a really good and easy conversation like so many others where if you would just answer the question that we ask, the conversation would move ahead so much better. But instead, he constantly tries to interject and wants to whine and, oh, you're mind reading, you're straw manning, why are you disparaging me? And blah, 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 blah. I'm sorry that your crotch hurts. But the fact of the matter is, the Bible advocates for slavery, not just permits it, uses the specific language saying you shall own slaves and you shall buy them from the heathen that surround you, that they will be your property, that you can beat them. Cool. We'll set aside all that because Alfred has this view of slavery that God's opposed to it, even though he has zero evidence that any God exists or has ever said one word against slavery. All he can do is point to the Bible and certain passages where he can interpret and reinterpret them so that he can make believe that he knows that there's a God who's opposed to slavery. And then when called out on that, he wants to say, well, that's the tradition. That's what we've been doing. We keep going through and it's a difficult, contradictory book. Well, that's your fault. That's your problem. Mm-hmm. I'm not the one following or trying to make excuses for a problematic, contradictory book. You don't have evidence that there is a God. You don't have evidence that your view on what God thinks is correct. You have made a religion unto yourself where what you think about God is what you're going to worship. You are your own idol. And when people rightfully point out, hey, hang on, the Bible says this. Well, there's a long tradition afterwards of us interpreting it and respinning it. Yeah. That's why there's over 1,000 denominations that all identify as Christian and yet don't agree on virtually any point of doctrine. There's not a single point of doctrine that isn't disagreed upon by someone somewhere, including whether or not Jesus was human at all, whether he existed at all.
True.
And so Alfred wants to call in. And I just don't think you guys are paying enough attention to the robust conversations and the traditions surrounding Christianity. You know why I don't pay attention to that? Because I'm now immune to propaganda. I'm now immune to people saying, ooh, here's what the Bible says, but here's what it actually means. Because the Bible itself points out that God be true and every man a liar, and that all scripture is useful for instruction and all of it is God-breathed. And if you come in and say, yeah, I know the Bible says that, but here's what it actually means, you have to present a justification for it. And if the only justification you can present, Alfred, is that you point to all the other people who are doing the same thing that you're doing, God is laughing his ass off at you while he sends you directly to hell.
It's a bad time. It's a bad time. But Alfred doesn't give a shit. He already hung up. But like the fact that like you like this is the reason why people were interpreting the Bible to be pro-slavery in the back. Like this is tradition. You have to interpret it this way. If you can't fucking grapple with the fact that if this guy is the most intelligent creature in the universe and he can't write a decent ass book, you admit that the Bible is contradictory as fuck. You admit that the Bible has all these horrible moral atrocities in it that it condones and enforces. Like that's, and you're still gonna say, yeah, but there's some corn in that turd, and I'm gonna fucking pick it out myself. I'm gonna figure it out. Like, no, dude, it's fucking gross. And I cannot be fucked with when we have this conversation where Alfred's trying to tell us that we need to read the Bible better, we need to interpret better. After there were like fucking 5 different times where we had to tell him what was in the damn Bible because he hadn't checked. He hadn't read it. And it's like, does it actually say that? Yes, here's chapter and verse. Oh, well, okay, I guess. Yeah, whatever. Well, it didn't mean that. That's what I'm talking about with the Trump thing. He didn't say that. Oh, he said that. Well, he didn't mean that. Oh, he meant that. Well, there's bad stuff elsewhere as well. Oh, there isn't. It's actually really fucking bad and uniquely bad. Well, you're not interpreting it right. And this is why I only sometimes like democracy. Oh, man. Because Trump said that we should abolish the Constitution. And so Alfred has to be behind that because he said it.
To be fair, I only sometimes like democracy. I like democracy in principle, but as long as we are surrounded by people who are ill-informed, misinformed, stupid, evil, or something else, I don't like the results of democracy. I like the principle. But it's like, let's imagine you, Forrest, have 23 kids.
Oh, God.
And
kill me.
You and your wife and your kids are all going to vote on what's for dinner. I'm pretty sure with 23 kids, there's going to be a significant portion of them that are young enough and ill-informed enough that you guys might never eat anything other than gummy bears and mac and cheese if voting was allowed. And, you know, while that's great in the short term,
but a fine one.
Yeah. I don't want to read too much into, I mean, I agree with you. And it's really weird to have somebody say that they like democracy sometimes. I don't want to read too much into it, especially when we have someone who admits that they don't really know that much about the Bible, don't really read the parts of the Bible, and then want to make all kinds of excuses for it based on interpretation and tradition. I don't care about Christian tradition post New Testament, because that's everybody sitting around going, gosh, this stuff really isn't that well written. It's not very clear. Let's see if we can make it make sense for us. And that is how you got 1,000 denominations of Christianity. Yeah.
That's the Socrates's criticism of it as well, is that like this, if you have perfect democracy, then the person in charge is always going to be the biggest charlatan and the biggest showman and the person who can, convince the most people that he's going to do, and you can make the biggest promises. It doesn't matter if he's a liar or not. Also, it was always a he. But like that was the whole point. That's why I'm big on education, y'all. It's really cool.
Can you go ahead
We
and
got a
start
few
the
calls
next
left.
one? I apologize. I'm in incredible pain and need to step away for just a second.
Yeah, it's fine. We're a weird pair. You just got back from oral surgery. I'm here fucking hacking up a lung, voice cracking, dying, coughing. It's the show, y'all. You tuned into it. This is really your fault at the end of the day. We're gonna move on to. We're actually gonna take this call and see what happens with it. We got Jason, pronouns he him, calling in from great alpacas. Great big ones. Wants to know if atheists believe in miracles. Hi, Jason. You're on the line with Forrest and only Forrest, and the answer is no. How are you doing today?
Okay, hello. I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
Never had a bad day. A little bit coughsome today. That's about it.
Okay, so first off, I'd like to say Forrest Valkai, that's a pretty cool name.
Thank you. I picked it out myself.
Okay, so I know that you guys are the type of atheists who rely on like empirical knowledge when it comes to theology and making your positions. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, more or less. Yeah.
Okay. So I'd like you to imagine this scenario. Okay, so imagine if you were able to see everything that's ever happened and everything that will ever happen everywhere until the last star burns out. Like, I'm talking about every square inch of space, every millisecond, everywhere that passes by. You were able to see every story that we'll never be able to know or whatnot, right? And say,
I'm into it.
If you were able to graph all of these miracles and anomalies, and you were able to just see how often these miracles happen on all the planets that have ever existed everywhere, where life exists, where the past just of all time everywhere. Do you think that would constitute for at least more than a 0% chance that there's something outside of our realm? And I'm not talking about just a straight traditional God or whatever, but at least something outside of our realm.
So just let me rephrase it just to make sure that I'm understanding what you're actually asking. You're saying if I were to know every single thing that ever happened everywhere forever, if I was truly omniscient in this universe, then I would see a bunch of weird shit happening from time to time. And would the sum total of all those strange occurrences and anomalies be enough to convince me that actually there was some sort of a supernatural thing going on? Is that a fair summary of what you're saying? Or am I missing something?
Yeah, like see if there was, I don't know, some in the future there'll be like some technology that'll let you do something like that, right?
Sure. I'm cool with the hypothetical. I don't mind it. I just want to make sure I'm summarizing it fairly and I'm not arguing against something you're not actually saying.
Okay, yeah, that's a fair assessment, yes.
Okay, so then because I don't think miracles are real, then I would, based on my current understanding, I would say that if I knew every single thing about if I was omniscient, then those strange, weird, unexplainable occurrences wouldn't be unexplainable anymore. Like, so if you had this situation where, somebody rose from the dead seemingly or whatever like that, and people call that a miracle, if I actually knew everything that was happening there, I would have the understanding of the biomedical, the situation and what's actually occurring there and why that person didn't actually miraculously return. They just, something else happened and here's what's going on. Someone heard the voice of their dead loved one or something like that, and they call that a miracle. I would then know, actually, this is the psychological phenomenon that's occurring in your brain. This is why you heard that. This is the chair squeak that you misheard as your partner talk or whatever like that. I would understand it fully. Yeah. So because I'm starting from the position that these things are explainable, it doesn't mean that we don't. These things are explainable even if we don't have an explanation. This thought experiment doesn't really work for me. If I were to take it in the faith that it was given, and say, I'm sorry, I promise I'll shut up here in a second. But if I were to take it in the meaning that I think you meant it, and say that there are things that are truly unexplainable, even if you know everything, is that what you're saying?
Wait, can you say that one more time?
It sounds like what you're getting at is that you do think that there are certain things that even if you know everything, you would have no explanation for. Is that what you're arguing for?
Yeah, like to the last point you were said, like, yeah, you'll be able to discern, you know, that, okay, you just heard, you know, some random chair squeak in the back. Like, that's not a miracle. But, you know, say, even, I know you guys aren't a fan of Trump. I'm not too much either. But even him getting shot, right? Like, you know, believe it, maybe it's a conspiracy behind it or not. But the fact that, you know, he did turn his head just slightly, I think that constitutes maybe a miracle.
So,
in a way.
So to be clear, the other presidents who have gotten shot and survived, are they also all miracles?
I think it's a miracle that no, to answer your question, no, but I do think that it is that one in a million chances, you know?
So then the person behind him that died because they took the bullet that was meant for him, was that a miracle?
I wouldn't say that the entire scenario of it was just some, you know, holy thing that you know, that we'll just pass. Like, it's tragic that, you know, multiple people died that day, but
right.
The fact that,
and now, and I'm not, I want to be very clear, I am neither condoning nor endorsing political violence of any kind. I'm going to say some disparaging things about Trump, and on the back end of this, it might sound like I'm saying he should have gotten shot. I am not saying that at all. I'm just putting that caveat in there for people who are going to misinterpret what I'm saying. But like, now that he has survived that and is alive and is posed to strip the rights and freedoms away from lots and lots of people are going to be hurt, lots of people are going to die because of his presidency, because of his insane policies, because of the people he's putting in major cabinet positions. Are all of those deaths and all of that misery and suffering that will be the result of his presidency, is that also miraculous?
Well, that's a very heavy question, but I can't say.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really believe in either side of the parties, but I can't say either one of them are saints to the higher standards, at least where we want them to be.
That's not what I asked you.
But
that's not what I asked you. Trump specifically is attacking LGBT people. Specifically, his policies are going to hurt people of color. Specifically, his policies are going to hurt the disabled. Specifically, his policies are going to hurt veterans. Specifically, his ideas are going to hurt the poor and middle class. Like, he has actually outright said that he is attacking specific marginalized communities, using them as scapegoats for his failures and his inefficiency and his ego. So, like, the fact that he wants to erase trans people from existence in this country, is that a miracle?
I don't think he wants
part
to
of the miracle of him. He literally said it with his own mouth. You can actually watch his campaign videos from his website. He wants to erase trans people, is what he's saying. He actually said with his own mouth that he, as president, will make it the law of America that the only genders we recognize are male and female, and that they are assigned at birth. That is conflating sex and gender together and saying that trans and intersex people do not exist. He is making it the law that trans and intersex people are not valid citizens of America, do not exist in our life. And he already, in his last term, immediately removed any mention of LGBT people, of equality, diversity, equity, inclusion, all these other things from, like, every government website, and banned trans people from the military and a bunch of other shit. So, like, yeah, that's actually what he is doing and what he has said out loud with his own face that he's doing. Matt, what are you saying? You have a thing.
My question is, if that's what he's said and what he's done in part in his last term, why, Jason, do you think he means something different?
Well, I think that entire topic is very nuanced. Like, where he's talking about eliminating the transgender
Jason,
people
this
from
isn't about nuance.
Military.
Trump has said things, and you don't think he means it, and I'm asking why not.
Well, because I'm getting to my point. Like, well, it depends on the context of what you're saying. Like, in the military, like,
context is he banned trans people from the military. What context do you need? He already did it. He banned trans people from serving openly in the military and said he's going to do it again. What context am I missing for you to think that he's not going to do that?
Well, he just may do it, but it might not be as bad as, you know,
Jason, I'm not interested in the fiction that lives in your fucking head. When he was in office last time, he banned trans people from serving openly in the military. He has said he's going to do it again. He has also said that on day one, he will declare as presidential fiat that there are only two genders, male and female, and that the one that's on your birth certificate is the one that you're going to have for life. You don't think he's going to do these things, and I'm trying to figure out why you think he's not going to do what he said he's going to do and has done before.
No, I think he will do it. I'm just saying that I don't think it's as bad.
Then
as
why did you
guys are
pretend that
presenting.
maybe it won't be as bad?
Why is it? Yeah, why is it not bad?
Okay,
What could be
so
not bad about that?
I heard this one argument earlier this week or so, or last week, and the guy, he was going on about they're not allowing trans people in the military because, you know, or women. Well, they are allowing women, but they don't want those type of people to join, you know, like Navy SEALs or like super elite special forces because, you know, they're going to have
Jason,
to lower
have you
the
ever been in
standards
the
to do
military?
certain things.
Jason,
They're not
have you
lowering
ever served in the
standards.
military?
That's never been the case.
I'm actually going to serve the military in a couple weeks. Like I'm already got my papers ready next week. Like I'm already took my ASVAB and everything. Like I'm headed up.
Did you vote for Trump?
Oh, no. I don't support him, but you know, I got to live with it for the next 4 years. At least you won't have to run again, you know.
Yeah, you might get to live with it for the next 4 years, but the other people who are going to die won't.
Yeah, that's the big thing. Is that, like, you know, talking about how they're going to have to lower standards to these people? That's unreasonable. That's not the case.
Maybe
And
it's bad.
You're looking down on the entire military structure to say that. It's just weird. But that's not even the point, because, like, we're getting in the weeds about this. The point is, like you said, Trump not being or surviving an assassination attempt was miraculous. And what I'm trying to present to you is that there are immediate and long-term effects that are extremely detrimental. So where are you drawing the line on this miracle? Is it miraculous that he didn't get killed?
Well,
or is it miraculous that because he didn't get killed, somebody else did get killed, and now he has this insane policies that he's trying to implement on our country that are going to result in the death of lots of LGBT people, lots of women, lots of immigrants, lots of disabled people, lots of poor people? Like, is all of that part of the miracle as well?
That there are good miracles and bad miracles. All I'm saying is that it was incredibly improbable, but still possible that he survived. That is what I'm saying. I'm not saying that it was a good thing or a super bad thing. Or
so then,
Jason.
You're saying that just
probable, and
so
you're
taking the word rare event. Is it a miracle every time somebody wins the lottery? Is every single time somebody wins the lottery a miracle?
I mean, you would say it's improbable. So
right. It's improbable.
It's pretty rare.
It's not a miracle.
But I wouldn't say
you're just saying things are miracles because it's a word you like. There's no actual definition then, if that's what you're doing. It's not a miracle. It's just something that wasn't likely to happen. Unlikely shit happens all the time. It's shockingly likely that something unlikely will happen every now and then. So for you to just gloss over all this because you want to call it a miracle is weird. And to say there are good and bad miracles, that's a totally new thing.
How is that?
Well, I know you're calling it as an agnostic, but generally speaking, the idea of a miracle is that some sort of God or whatever intervened in our natural world to make something happen that would not otherwise be able to happen. It's not improbable. It would have been impossible without his interference.
Well, to that I say, I don't think you guys can look into the future, so maybe it might not be as bad as liberals might think it is, think it will be.
What if it is?
Not a liberal.
We'll have to see, but I mean, Trump wasn't really my whole point at all. That was just something that was just an example of my main point.
It's a god-awful, it was your first example, and it's an awful example. And I'm trying to hammer home the fact that it doesn't matter what Trump is or what Trump said or what Trump's going to do, that we're getting in the weeds with all of that. I'm just trying to point out the fact that if you think this one thing is a miracle, you need to also grapple with all of the implications of that as well. There were plenty of assassination attempts on Hitler, and he survived, and then the Holocaust happened. So we don't need to look in the future. We know that shit, right? So were those good miracles or bad miracles, or were they just not miracles? I'm sorry, I was just finishing my point, Matt.
Oh, I thought I got in a gap. Here's the thing. There have been several people who've had assassination attempts and they survived. Are those all miracles?
I mean, if it were me, and I survived an assassination attempt, I would say, hey, that would be a miracle.
What's the
Very
definition
rare
of a
event is what
miracle?
I'm classifying a miracle is.
What's the definition of a miracle?
To me, a miracle is an extremely rare event.
Okay. How many people have been president?
47.
Well, they're getting ready to be a 47th president, but that, you know, some of them served multiples, you know, so a couple of them there. But yeah, we'll just go with that. How many of them survived assassination attempts?
I wouldn't be surprised if
Well,
they all survived them.
I just give it to you.
I
It's
mean,
3.
at least the stories that we do know.
Three out of 50. Does that seem like it's miraculous odds? What's so miraculous that people miss or don't actually kill people while they're trying to? What's miraculous about that?
It's very. I like how you phrase that question, but
yeah, I got an even better one. Let's assume that you had a good definition of what a miracle was and what the odds are, and let's assume that the failed assassination attempt against Trump qualifies as a miracle under your definition. So what? What is the fact that it's miraculous tell us about anything? Does it tell us anything about a God? Does it tell us anything about why it happened?
Okay, my whole point was just that, you know, if you were able to somehow through some technology be able to omnisciently see everything that's ever happened throughout every square inch of space and whatnot, and you were able to assimilate and be able to construct some type of graph to see all these anomalies or whatever you would classify as a miracle. Okay, yeah, let's not say miracle, but just complete anomalies. Like, you know, if you watch 60 Minutes or something, or somebody might say, you know, the doctors told me I would never be able to walk, or the doctors told me this or that, or this entire civilization, like they just survived a tsunami or something, and that's just the stories that we hear about. What about all the stories that we never get to hear about on all the other different planets that might be out there of all these
let's
different
assume that everything
that
you're talking about happened and is miraculous, as in incredibly unlikely. My question remains, so what? What does the existence of things happening tell us about anything?
Okay, so to that, I'm saying that if you would classify that as miraculous, that those events, that miracles in this universe do, if miracles are real, then would an atheist say that there is at least more than a 0% chance that there is something outside of our realm? And I'm not saying a God, I'm not saying a deity, I'm just saying that there's something else.
Stop talking. I already said, if we assume these things happen, then what we're saying is incredibly rare things happen. So what? Does that mean there's any justification for thinking there's a God being out there doing it? If you don't know what the possible explanations are, then no. You should not be going, wow, something incredibly unlikely happened. Maybe there's a God. No, that's not how reason works. Something incredibly unlikely happened. The answer is, I don't know why that something happened. Do you know why? Do you have a way to demonstrate why that happened? At what point does something unlikely happening become, therefore there's a God?
Well, my argument isn't necessarily for God. I'm just saying that.
I didn't ask about your argument. I asked you a specific question about at what point does something unlikely happening demonstrate that there's a God?
To that I'd say, you know, if you were able to use this simulation and whatnot, right? And
don't need a simulation. I don't need your argument. I'm saying, at what point does
you were able to see
never mind, Jason, you go ahead and finish. I don't need to finish. You're not interested in learning.
Yes, it's fine. I have the same thing. It's just, Jason, you have said repeatedly that you just call things miracles when they're unlikely. And then what you've done is you've done away with the meaning of the word miracle. There's no supernatural. Then to answer your question that you keep asking as well, if you saw all of these anomalies, all of these extremely unlikely events, would you then say that there's something supernatural? No, because by your definition and mine, I would just say, yeah, that's really rare. That's a rare thing that doesn't often happen. I've seen the whole universe. I know everything. And that's something that doesn't happen often, but it does happen. It's not magic. It's not supernatural. It's just a thing that could happen. And it's the exact same thing that I said at the beginning of the call. So we've been on this call for 20 minutes, and my first answer remains my answer. If I saw all these anomalies, as you keep calling them, I would say, yeah, those are weird. Those are weird anomalies. Neat. And I would move on with my life the same way that I do now. There's no reason to believe in anything supernatural any more than me telling you, hey, this, Trump didn't get shot. That's because the invisible fairies moved the bullet. They were flying in the air in their super lightning speed, and they caught the bullet and moved it over and killed some other asshole. That's what happened. It was the fairies. Why don't you at least take that into account? Maybe it was the fairies. You wouldn't take me seriously because it's a silly thing to say. So I don't have any reason to believe anything that you're saying is a valid thing to believe, Jason. I don't think there's anything such thing as a miracle by your definition or anybody else's.
Okay. But I still do think it may be a good thing that Trump might have won. I mean, you saw China; they came out and they're trying to,
Yeah, I'm not interested.
Have ties.
I'm not interested because I guarantee you, Trump will be worse. And I'm not saying I'm not a big fan of any particular candidate in this race, but like Trump smooches with China. Trump loves dictators. Trump speaks very highly of dictators. Trump loves rubbing elbows with dictators. Trump said that he wish he had generals like Hitler had, and wishes that his army treated him like Hitler, and like all these things. Trump, if you're going to say, well, China's bad and Trump's going to be better, promise is not. And the fact that we already owe China billions of dollars, and you've got now this failed businessman who's declared bankruptcy a dozen different times and failed a bunch of businesses. This is the guy that's going to fix our debt with this freaking, shitty government over there. Yeah, totally. I'm going to move on. Matt, do you have anything at the end?
Yeah. Jason thinks that it's a good thing that Trump got elected because Jason doesn't believe that things are likely to be as bad as he said they're going to be. So your incredible optimism backed by no evidence is why you think it might be a good thing that Trump's elected president. So tell that to the tens of thousands of women who die while not being able to get a medically needed abortion, carrying their rapist
more women
babies.
Die through abortion.
You do not want to fucking come at me on this. How many women are carrying their rapist babies right now?
I don't believe in that. I even would say that people under 17 should be allowed to get.
How many women are dying?
Trump doesn't.
While bleeding out because they can't get the treatment they need because of these laws on abortion. You don't even fucking want to get started with me, Jason.
I'll agree with you on those things. If you have, health defects and whatnot, or if you're under the age of 17,
I don't care if you disagree with.
You should be able to get an abortion.
Jason, what is the reason? What justification? Jason, what justification is there for you to be able to force anyone else to remain pregnant?
I'm just saying, my point of view. I think.
No, Jason, you're going to answer the question I asked, or you're not going to speak.
Those are human beings that are
you're going to answer the question I asked, or you're not going to speak. What is the justification that permits you to force people to remain pregnant against their will?
Oh, there's none at all. I'm just saying what I would like.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Is that
right?
I don't care what you'd like.
And for Jason to sit here and say, well, I think that there should be exceptions, and I think that Trump doesn't. So, like, where are we going with it? It won't be as bad. It'll just be worse than what I want.
Oh, well.
But it won't be that bad. Yeah, it'll just be fine. It'll be fine. It'll be fine for Jason, probably.
Trump flatly said there should be a legal penalty for the women who get abortions. Mm-hmm. So if anybody decides that they're going to get a medically necessary abortion, but don't worry, it's not going to be as bad as Trump says it is, because Jason doesn't think so.
Yep.
By the way, I've got
also
the person. For the week.
Oh, hell yeah. We'll get there in just 1 second if it's okay, because I just want to address the person in chat a little while ago when we were talking about how Trump's policies are going to mean the serious consequences for women, for LGBT people, for immigrants, for disabled people, for all these things. And I mentioned a lot of people are going to die. And somebody in the chat was like, well, how give me one reason why Trump's policies are going to mean the killing LGBT people. What LGBT people are going to die because of Trump's policy? You don't even have to look to the future, to the things that he said. You can look to his last term, where I have the article right here from the New York Times. Trump administration erases transgender civil protections in healthcare. So he made it legal for healthcare providers to discriminate against trans people. That means they're going to die more often because they can't get the healthcare that they need, because their doctor is a bigot, because they were stripped of their civil rights protections, because Trump didn't want them to have them, so he took them away. That's something he did last time he was in office. I don't even have to bring up all the shit that he said about the next time, what he wants to do this time. Last time he did it, he passed laws that result in the death of trans people. Read, and you won't vote for Trump. Go ahead, Matt. I'm sorry. You had a thing that you were going to say as well.
No, you're fine. I just was letting you know I had the schedule because Arden sent it to me. My mouth hurts so much that I probably shouldn't be talking anyway. Tonight, the Sunday show after dark is at 7 p.m. Central, and it's going to have Seth Andrews and Paulogia. Tomorrow, Skeptalk will be Aron Ra and Adair. So you'll learn the difference between Aron and Aaron, hopefully. Tuesday's Chewed Gum is going to be Eve and Alyssa. Both of these are at 6 p.m. Central. The Hang Up, there's literally nothing listed for the Hang Up this week. And that's probably my fault, because knowing I was going in for oral surgery and stuff, I don't think we booked a guest for me, so we just didn't list it. We'll figure that out and get it sorted. Transatlantic Call-In Show on Thursday is at 2 p.m. Central with Luxander and Josie Caballero. I don't know. That's all I got for the schedule.
All right. Yeah. I think this is my last show for a while, isn't it? I don't think I'm on until next month after this. Let me tell you. You might have just read.
Well, that's disappointing. You should come in Wednesday night and do my show.
Wednesday is literally the only day this semester I have classes. I've got to be gone all day. I'm sorry. Next semester is going to be wild. Next semester is my last semester in this program, and I'm going to be loading them up, finishing strong. We have got. I'm excited about this call actually, because we had two calls with Alfred telling us that you have to pick and choose the parts of the Bible that are true and that need to be taken literally, and that there's higher and lower canons. Now we've got Chandler, pronouns he, him, calling in from Valiant Ants, little dudes with big hearts, who says the Bible is not something that you get to pick and choose from. That's what it says on the call screen. Chandler, you're on the line with Forrest and Matt. How you doing today?
How's it going? How are y'all?
I'm doing really well, man.
I'm really bad, but
coming on.
In Forrest thing of never having a bad day, I'm trying to be cautiously optimistic, but I'm in a massive amount of pain.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, man.
Thanks.
It's a hard time. I'm glad you called in. I don't know if you heard what I just said, but we had a caller that called in 2 times to tell us that you have to relativize the Bible and take certain things out of it and not seriously, and that God changed his mind here and there, even though he never said it. So I'm delighted to talk to you and see what different direction we can go with that.
Yeah, yes, sir. So just to preface, I don't want to get into an argument and stuff. You know, I just want to have a respectful conversation. You know, I feel like that's what people, they tend to go off and.
So are you going to tell us what you believe and why, and then expect that we're not going to have an argument?
No. That's not what I'm saying.
It can be a polite argument. It can be a pleasant argument.
I got no problem with that.
Yeah, just know, Chandler, like we told the last person, like if something comes up that's a problem, we're going to have to cut in to talk about it because we're the host and that's our job. And also there is a delay. So we might talk over each other and get frustrated with that. But other than that, I'll try my best to keep things pleasant, I promise.
Yes, sir. All right, yeah, so before I start, the reason I called in is because most theists or Christians I recognize on this channel, like they don't tend to back what they believe. And so this is why I wanted to call. So yes, I believe that, you know, the Bible is God inspired, you know, like he referenced it. Why?
Yeah.
Start with that.
Because why? Because I heard the gospel. God gave me the faith to believe, and with continuing to read and God giving me the faith. That's actually pretty much
really quickly. I have two things really quickly, if that's okay with you. Number
Yes, sir.
one, I think, we could also quote scripture. We did last time when we were talking about how it says that every verse is God breathed and so on and so on. So, but then that would be circular.
Mhm.
The Bible proves the Bible, but it would make sense if you're calling in to say the Bible doesn't allow you to pick and choose. But also, I think what's more important is that you're saying you read the scripture and God gave you the faith and God is revealed and all these things. I would say that, did you grow up in Virginia?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay, so you grew up in a very religious part of a very religious country that has Christianity as the vast majority religion. You probably grew up going to church or having this passed on to you. If you didn't, you were still surrounded by it constantly. So you weren't given the faith by a God. You were completely inundated with this belief system for your entire life. And even at a very young age, at a very impressionable age, we're told that this is the good thing to believe, and what only good people believe this, and all good people believe this. Again, even if your parents in your culture, in your specific family, did not specifically do this, this is the messaging that is around us at all times in this country, especially in places like Virginia. And so you are surrounded by this, inundated by this, and indoctrinated by this, and so now you are suffering from confirmation bias. That's what I say to what you're talking about. I would like you now to tell, because I'm not a mind reader, I'm just telling you my interpretation. I would like you to tell me how you know that I'm wrong and you're right. How do you differentiate between being brought up in a culture that inundates a child with this belief system and indoctrinates them into it versus you had this divine revelation and God gave you the faith? What's the difference?
Well, the reason I say God gave me the faith was because the Bible says that no one come to the Father unless the Father draw him. Also, it says that God gives you the faith to believe. So faith is not something that you just come up with on your own.
So are you drawing? Are you drawing just go ahead, Matt. I'm sorry, we're talking at the same time.
You said that you came to believe that the Bible is God inspired because you read the gospel and God gave you the faith to believe. The question I was going to ask was, how do you know that God gave you faith? But you just answered that because you said the Bible says no one comes to the Father. But now you're just saying you believe the Bible because you believe the Bible.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, are you drawing, when you said God gave you the faith and you know that because it says it, are you drawing the vocabulary from the Bible? Are you saying I'm saying it this way because that's how the Bible says it? Or is that actually your justification? And you're saying the Bible says that this is how I'm believing, so I am believing this, as Matt just talked about. Trying to give you an out.
Well, I'm going back to the Bible, because it is the truth, and it says that God is the one that gives you the faith to believe. So that's why I'm saying where my faith came from.
No, okay. Do you understand what a circular argument is and why it's fallacious?
I mean, I can understand a circular argument regarding other things, but when it comes to the Bible, there's no point because it is the truth.
No, do you know what a circular argument fallacy is?
Explain, please.
A fallacy, specifically circular reasoning fallacy, is when the conclusion is already assumed in the premise. And so the question is, why do you believe the Bible? And you say, I believe the Bible because I read the gospel and God gave me the faith to believe the Bible. And when we say, well, how do you know God gave you the faith to believe the Bible? And then you say, because the Bible told me so. So you're saying the Bible is true because the Bible is true. That is a circular reasoning fallacy, which means your argument is fallacious and the conclusion must be rejected or cannot be accepted.
Well, so that's why I would disagree, because I believe that the Bible is true.
You don't. Okay, so you disagree. You disagree with the basics of logical fallacies because the Bible is true.
In regards to the Bible, yes.
So in all fairness, he did say a second ago. I'm sorry, just in all fairness, he said a second ago that he does understand why circular arguments are bad in every other case, but in the Bible, it's not. So it's also a thing called special pleading. And surely you understand why that's a problem, right?
It's not a problem. It's not a problem in regarding to the scriptures because it's God breathed.
Right. And so Chandler, I just want you to hear what you just said. Like, you understand special pleading is a problem, but special pleading isn't a problem because I'm using special pleading. Like, that's you literally just use special pleading to defend special pleading in order to make a circular argument, which you know is bad, but it's okay because it's special pleading. Like, that's you are using. I understand what you're saying. Like, I really do. I'm not trying to steamroll you here. I understand you believe the Bible is true, and therefore there is no way that it could be inerrant. But just in this particular part of the conversation, you are literally using logical fallacies to defend the use of logical fallacies. Is that not a problem for you?
The main point I'm trying to make.
No, answer the question.
I asked you a question. I asked you a question. I would like you to answer it, please.
Can you repeat the question, sir, so I can make sure?
I don't know why you didn't listen the first time.
It's all right. I asked you. You literally just said that special pleading is bad, but it's okay right now because it's about the Bible, which is special pleading. And the whole point we got here is that you're saying the Bible's true because the Bible's true, which is circular reasoning. And you said circular reasoning is okay in this case because it's the Bible, which is special pleading. And special pleading is okay in this case because it's the Bible. So you are literally using logical fallacies to condone and justify using more logical fallacies, despite the fact that you recognize that they are fallacies. And I'm curious to know why that's okay with you. And if you say it's because the Bible's true, I'm going to lose it. Like, I got to know, why is this a situation where you're okay with using logical fallacies to justify logical fallacies? That's a wild thing to do.
Sorry, so I'm trying to find a good way to explain this.
It's going to take a second. It's all right.
You can take decades. Nobody else has been able to explain it, because basically what you're saying is that the entire realm of logical argument, people sat down and figured out various syllogistic forms and identified fallacious reasoning, and that this applies everywhere else when we're engaged in logical argument and reasoning. But there's an exception for the Bible, but it's okay because it's the Bible.
I would say yes, because I believe Bible. Now you can study the You can study the background for, like, you know, if you want to go for manuscript authenticity and all that, but
I don't think it's necessary. And so like, I'm ready to move on from this one point because I had something else I wanted to ask you, but I just want to make sure that, like, we're on the same playing field with this. So, like, just you're saying that the initial point of the call is that you can't pick and choose the Bible. And I believe you did say, correct me if I'm wrong, that the entire Bible is the true word of God, that you take the entire thing perfectly literally. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, it literally depends on the scriptures that you're reading. So, like, if there's narrative and there's poetry and there's apocalyptic literature and there's metaphors, so it just depends on what you're reading. Like, for instance, if you're reading the law, you're going to take that as narrative and literal.
Okay, so then let's dig into it a little bit. When I mentioned that you'd called after this other type of person we talked to twice, that was talking about how you have to pick and choose, and you're saying you can't pick and choose. The big thing that we were talking about was slavery. Now, the Bible, if you take it at just face value, if you just read it for what it is, the Bible is very clearly a pro-slavery book. The God of the Bible multiple times condones and endorses slavery, tells you where to buy slaves, how to beat slaves, how slaves are property to be passed down to children. Over and over and over, this happens in the Bible. So I want to ask you, is law from God? Is that also falling into your literal interpretation? Or are you saying that part is metaphorical and needs to be interpreted elsewhere? Is this a part that you think you can pick and choose? How do you grapple with that?
Yes, sir. So yes, sir. That is literal. And so that was given to since the culture around the time of the people of Israel going out of Egypt, had slaves, God gave them laws about slaves. And if going off this by memory, they were able to have slaves, and then every 7 years they were to work with them for 7 years, and at the end of the 7 years they were obligated to set them free and give them stuff to help them get off the ground.
Right.
But however, if the slaves chose
so Chandler. Yeah. So Chandler, I'm sorry. I just want to be very clear. You are talking about Israelites enslaving other Israel or Hebrew slavery, I suppose it would be called.
No, they weren't allowed to.
There are
they
different
weren't allowed
kinds
to
of
enslave-
slavery.
They weren't allowed to enslave their own people.
No, sir, you
They
are
were.
wrong.
And
No, you are monumentally
they
wrong.
were.
And what you just said about 7 years, that only applied to Hebrew slaves. It's only the
Yes,
Hebrew
that's what I'm
slaves
trying
that
to
had
get
to be
at.
let go in 7 years. The Gentile slaves
Yes.
were yours forever.
Yeah, so that's what I was getting at, is that you were describing this one part of that passage that tells you how to treat different people based on their ethnicity and their nationality differently. And so, yes, Hebrew slaves you keep for 7 years and then you let them go unless you give them a wife and children. If they come into slavery with wife and children, then all of them get to go free. But if they get a wife and child, if they marry while they're a slave and they have children, their wife and their children are your slaves forever. And the only way that they get to stay with them is if they also agree to be slaves forever. Everybody else
Yes,
who
sir.
isn't Hebrew is just a slave
Yes,
forever
sir. I
from
just
the
realized
beginning.
sorry to
And it
cut you
says
off.
specifically, yeah, it's fine. Yeah, it's fine. I just want to point out that like what you're doing right here is a very common apologist talking point where you say, well, there was this one particular kind of slavery that was okay. And the two things that I think you need to grapple with is, number one, that's not all of the slavery in the Bible. That's the most benign. But the second thing is that there is no good slavery anyway. So even if that was what they're talking about, there's no good slavery. Slavery is always bad forever. And so, like, no matter how you slice it, the God you believe in told people to do something absolutely hideous. It doesn't matter when he told them to do it, how he told them to do it, what the conditions or circumstances or context was. He told people to do something fucking evil, man. And I don't get how that's cool with you.
Yes, sir. So I'm gonna retract. Yeah, I did make a mistake there. I forgot that it was regarding to Hebrew slaves, and I apologize for that.
I appreciate that. No, you don't have to apologize. I appreciate you taking accountability for it. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. And so yes, I'm willing to accept that he gave them laws regarding slaves.
Okay. So then does that make God good if he's telling people to do something that's objectively evil?
Bible says that he is good, so yes, it still makes him good.
Well, the Bible also says, God says in the Bible that I create good and evil, that he does good and evil things. So he's not all good. He's just sometimes good.
Where are you getting? I have never heard that. Where are you getting that from?
In Isaiah.
I can pull up yeah, it is in Isaiah, but I don't remember where. Let me look really quick. Isaiah.
I think it's like 43,
I create good and evil. I'm just kind of doing a quick tertiary search here. So that's Isaiah 45:7. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all things. And there are also several times in the Bible, which I don't want to pull up right now, but I can if you would like me to, but it's not necessary. But like, there are also several times in the Bible where God sends demons to torment people, where God tells lies, where God causes other people to tell lies, where God commands genocide, where God, tells people to kill every man, woman, and child in this entire area, but keep all the virgin girls for yourself to do whatever you like with. Like these, there's plenty of times where God says and does evil things. Slavery is not by any means the only example of God being horrifically evil. So again, my question to you is, God isn't all good, right? God is only sometimes good.
No, he is all good. And I would disagree with what you said about the lying, because it says in James that God, well, not in James, right where it says that God cannot lie.
Oh, well, okay. So let's example a couple of them. In the book of Genesis is a great, that God actually tells the first lie ever in the history of the universe in the book of Genesis. He tells Adam and Eve, he puts a tree and says, this is the tree of good and evil also. And he tells Adam and Eve, if they eat from that tree, they will die that very same day. And that is a lie. They don't.
He says they will die. I don't remember saying that they would die that very day. Hold on, let me look at it.
I can pull it up if you like. I actually have my Bible right next to me here that I use. Yeah. And feel free to double check me, because there's a lot of weirdness here. Let me see here. Yeah, beast the field, blah, blah, blah. If worst case scenario, I can double check and just look it up. Here it is. So this is from chapter 2, verse 17. Mine is King James version, so it's got shitty language. Sorry, but of the tree of good and of knowledge of good and evil, thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die. So he actually does say, the very day that you eat from this tree, you are going to die. And that isn't what happened at all. In fact, that's all the serpent says. The only lines the serpent has is, you won't die if you eat from this tree. So the serpent just tells the truth. God tells a lie.
Yeah. So that's actually not a lie. So, for instance, in the ESV it says, "But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in that day that you eat."
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. We're letting you finish. Chandler,
I
are you
think
there?
his phone went to sleep. He's on the web client.
Yeah, Chandler, if you're calling in over the internet, make sure to tap your phone and wake it up. Otherwise, we can't hear you.
Sorry, yes, sir.
Wait, now please continue what you're saying, because it sounded like you were going to say that the word die is a metaphor in this case.
No.
Okay, what does he mean?
So going back to it, we know that they are immediately cut off from the presence of God, and that they will eventually die. And so this is where we get into
that is not what the book says. And please explain, if God is everywhere, how you can be cut off from the presence of God.
because the scripture says it. Like, it says that God is omnipotent and omnipresent, and
actually the scripture doesn't say either of those things. The omnis are never used.
It explains that, sorry. You're right. I used the wrong word. He explained. That's revealed about him in the scripture.
So let's get back to chapter 2.
Yeah. So and they should die. And so this is where we get into the thing called scripture interprets scripture. So yes, we know that then Adam doesn't die for 900 and something years. And so And so by that, a long day. And so yep. And so by that we know, by the way, what God meant here was that, again, with being cut off from the presence of God, and that they will eventually die.
Where does it say that? Where does it say that?
It says that because Adam eventually dies at 900 and something years old.
Okay,
right.
So let me make sure I understand.
Let
me make sure I understand this argument, because you've already tossed out circular reasoning as okay with the Bible, but your argument is now, when the verse says you shall die on that day, and then you actually die 900 and some odd years later, the correct way to interpret that is that it didn't mean you would die on that day. It just meant that 900 years later, you would be separated from God.
Well, they were separated from God as soon as they sinned, and then they eventually died.
How can you be separated from God if God is everywhere?
I'll be honest with you, man. That's a really, really good question.
How can you be separated from what happened after they ate it?
They committed sin, and then God.
I don't know what happened. Didn't God walk in and say, "Where are you?"
Mm-hmm.
And the man says, "I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked." That doesn't sound like they're separated from God. They ate from the tree, and then God comes down and talks to them, right?
Yep, and then he kicks them out of the garden.
Doesn't know where they are.
Are they then separated from God?
But if God is omnipresent, wouldn't he have already known that? Why did he have to come down and ask what happened and then learn about it? Why did he just not know?
Well, he didn't. Well, that's a good question. He didn't have to. He could have, as soon as they did that, he could have killed them on the spot. But instead, in his mercy, he closed them and sends them out.
How is it merciful? Here's the thing. What did they eat?
Merciful because he doesn't kill them.
What did they eat? What did they eat?
Do you mean what did they eat in the garden?
Yes.
Yeah. That got them kicked out specifically.
They ate of the knowledge. They disobeyed God.
No. I asked what they ate. Why are you telling me that they disobeyed God? I asked what they. Stop talking. What did they eat?
They ate the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Prior to eating that fruit, did they know the difference between good and evil?
They knew the difference between good and evil. 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 No, they didn't actually.
If they didn't know the difference between good and evil, how could they have known it was wrong to eat the fruit?
Because God commanded them not to.
How do
Why
they
is
know
it
it's
wrong to
wrong
disobey God?
to disobey God? If they don't know the difference between right and wrong, you don't get to have, you don't know the difference between right and wrong. You don't know that it's wrong to disobey God.
Oh, I see what you just said. So what we mean by they don't know good, what we mean by good and evil is they don't understand what sin is. That's what I mean by that.
I asked you if they knew the difference between right and wrong. You said no.
They know the difference between obeying God and not obeying God.
Then what did they
Right, but
learn
they
from
don't
eating
understand
the
what's
fruit?
the point.
Sorry, it just cut out.
What did they learn from eating the fruit?
No, he hung up.
Did he?
Yeah, he did. It dropped on my side, and I haven't touched it. So, like, and it kind of
Here's the
you get in that
problem.
logic corner.
Here's the problem. At time A, God says, don't eat that. And at time A, they don't know the difference between good and evil, so they can't know that it's evil to disobey God. It's like if you sit down at a board game with children and you don't explain the rules, but then punish them for breaking the rules. Nothing about this is good. And I wanted to ask, did he think, since he's an advocate of believing the Bible because he believes the Bible, does he think there was an actual tree that had an actual fruit that gave you knowledge of good and evil?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I think that's silly.
And it also, like, it really, like, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but, like, really, like, you get into this logic trap with this thing where it's like, either this God is completely freaking stupid, or he wanted this to happen, or he's evil and he's crazy and he wanted just somebody to torture, or he's just, there's no way, if you're gonna slap the omnis in there, especially, there's no way to read this book, especially just the Genesis story, that makes God out to be a decent, reasonable, intelligent person in any way. He's a bumbling buffoon, or he's a sadistic son of a bitch. And there's no way around that. And I think, with our last caller there, I think that's what we were starting to get through. And so just the call had to end. You get back in this logic corner and we can't answer questions. So we got to move on.
Oh boy, we got some good theist calls coming up.
Yeah, I think you see number 5 there. I'm interested in getting to that one here in a minute. But first, I want to talk to number 3, if that's cool with you, because that could either be a really good call or it could be a troll, and I want to be done with it as fast as possible if that's the case. So let's see what happens. We talk to Jim, pronouns they, them, calling in from Flaming Llamas. It says God told him to call, so let's see. Pardon me, them. That's my mistake. Jim, you're on the line with Forrest and Matt. How you doing?
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello.
Yes.
I can hear you just fine.
Awesome. I'm not a troll.
Awesome.
So God told you to call?
Yeah.
Did you hear that
Yes,
audibly, or did it come in an email, or was it just an impression, or what? How does it work when God tells you to do something?
It is absolutely, it's in my mind. No email or phone call.
Okay. So in your
right
mind, does it feel like there's a voice that isn't you saying you should call this show, or is it something else?
It's not so much a dialogue. Sometimes it's that clear, but it's my full brain power telling me what's going to happen or what I should do or how I could prevent something, etc.
Okay. But how clear is the message? Because when I hear from people who supposedly speak with the dead, sometimes it's like they get a fuzzy feeling or they're getting an impression, and sometimes they get a very specific message. Like, does God tell you the answers to questions or what to say?
No. Okay. So it's not a feeling. It's not an emotion. And it's not answering my questions. It doesn't work like that with God. They don't come to me.
So if you said, if
and
you asked God, should I call the show? God wouldn't say yes.
Or was this like an independent thing that you just got? Like God was like, "Yo, call this show" out of nowhere.
Yes, it was what Forrest is saying. God had told. I do think of it
How do you
as
know
talking, but it's not. It doesn't
God?
appear in my mind as talking.
How do you know it's God?
Okay, so that's why I'm calling. And yeah,
Well,
and
I have a couple other qualifying questions after you get there.
I don't know. Can we get that one?
I'm just warning you. Yeah, no, we can. I'm just warning you. If that's the direction that you wanted the call to go, I might cut you off to ask a couple other questions. I'm not meaning to derail what you're saying. So please answer Matt's question, but then just know I might ask you some other stuff in a minute. I'm not trying to be a dick about it.
Yeah, sorry. And I've spoken with Forrest before during the election, never about God. And so it's good to talk to you again. And Matt, it's great to talk to you now. I'm sorry. I'm trying to say, what was your question, Matt?
How do you know it's God?
Because they have shown, well, okay, I know it because it is so evident, right? It's in my mind. It has to be, but it's also been proven to me by what has been conveyed.
Okay, I have some questions about that, but like, are you okay if I do a couple other ones really quick?
Sure.
Okay. Did you know about this show before God told you to call in?
Yes. And I'm familiar with both of your work. Forrest, I'm more familiar with your work, but I do know both of yours, and I know the show.
Okay. You said you had talked to me before. I didn't know if it was on this show or whatever other one, or if this was like you were familiar with it. Okay, so God picked a familiar format for you to call into. I find that poignant. Also, what is the point of the call? And I don't mean that for you. I mean, what did God expect to get out of this with you calling in?
I don't know. And that is a problem a lot of the time. And I apologize for calling. I've heard before, like the point of the show in general is to convince you and give evidence for why God, I can't do that. My belief is because God has done this to me. And actually I was raised, and this sounds probably familiar, but there is a weird thing going on with it that I really actually wanted to get to. But I was raised atheist, and they've come to me and actually told me that all of the religions are not right, and that actually you guys, like the atheists, are doing the best good for the world.
Super neat.
So
We agree.
That's why I'm calling.
I have other. Okay, so that actually does answer my next question, but it doesn't answer a couple of the other.
It's amazing.
Ones. Are there other options? Because you said a second ago, it's God because I wrote down it's so evident because it's in my mind. Are there other options for what God could be, or for what could actually be causing these impulses, whatever you're hearing in your head, besides a God?
Yeah, for sure. And I've heard this before. And like I say, I was really calling to get to the next part of it. And I absolutely understand it. I've heard them, similar calls. And yeah, absolutely. I've tried before with like friends and stuff, but I don't choose what God does. So God has come to me. I have some belief because of the things that they have, given me premonitions of. But that's not anything that I could give to you.
Sure. Okay, so you're acknowledging the fact that you have this anecdotal situation here, and you're not trying to convince us it's real because you know you can't, and instead you're calling to say something completely different. I also like the fact that God uses they, them pronouns. That's neat. That's a new one that we don't get often. And I like that a lot. I like to switch it up sometimes because it's just fun. Yeah. So, okay.
Yeah.
So what is the point of the call? Why did God tell you to call us?
God told me to call to talk to Matt and said that Matt would be mean to me. I don't know.
I don't think it would be.
And
I don't think Matt's never mean.
I'm not. I'm just conveying the message.
So when I asked before whether or not God is an impression or a statement, it seems that God specifically told you I was going to be mean to you.
Yes, sometimes. Yeah, sometimes it's. I mean, it's a combination. It's in my head, and I don't necessarily have a strong.
How do you tell the difference
between
How do you tell the difference between God actually talking to you in your head, or you just imagining that God's talking to you in your head?
Yeah, I mean, it's evident to me, but
I'm sorry.
I can't.
How do you tell the difference?
That's it.
That's not an explanation. That's not any sort of response. How can I tell the difference between you being how do I tell the difference between whether you're a liar, crazy, or actually hearing from God?
That's where I'm at with this. I mean, it works for me.
I'm sorry. The question I asked was, how can I tell the difference between those three?
Sorry. You can't. I can, but you can't.
Now,
and I can't give that to you.
So I got it. Stop talking. Why would God tell you to call the show if there's nothing you can do or say that would change my mind?
To tell me that you guys are doing great work and that all the religions of the world are people trying to take advantage of other people. And that all the holy books are not written by them.
If God wants you to call the show to tell us we're doing great work, why can't God just tell me that himself?
I don't know.
Jim.
Why don't you ask God and call back? Why don't you ask God and call back when he answers?
He can't. He said he can't ask God specific questions. All I'm taking out of this is that God's on our side.
No, Forrest, you need to stop talking. God told him to call and talk to me.
He said you would be mean to him.
That's true, too.
But God didn't tell you to call and talk to Forrest, did he?
Not. He was more interested in Matt.
You just used the wrong pronouns for God.
Damn it! In all fairness, I misgendered the caller as well.
For God.
Pronouns absolutely work like that.
Not for God.
Not to God.
I don't know.
But I prefer they.
How do you know what God's preferred pronouns are?
Because God, well, like I said, God doesn't have preferred. It doesn't really work like that for God.
How do you know?
But I have preferred pronouns, so that's what I tend to use. But I was also grew up in.
How do you know?
They come to me. I mean, the why I'm using they pronouns most of the time is a personal preference. It's not something that God has told me to do.
Your personal preference on God. How do you know God's okay with that?
Because they don't stop me.
Well, neither do the gods that don't exist, right? If a God doesn't exist, it doesn't stop you. And if a God is part of your imagination, it's not going to stop you. So how do you know that the God is real?
Well, because of premonitions that they've given me.
Like what?
It doesn't.
Well, okay. I will again. I mean, I know that this isn't good evidence, but I didn't
ask if it was good evidence. Why? Jim. When God told you to call, did he tell you to never answer the question that you're fucking being asked?
No.
Then answer the question that you're fucking being asked.
Sure. What was your question, Matt?
If you don't remember, I don't care.
You know what all I got from this is that Jim, you are the most honest theist caller we've had in a long time. You have bad evidence that you can't convey. And he's probably a troll, but like, who knows? Maybe Jim's very sincere, and maybe Jim actually has these premonitions. I'm willing to give Jim the benefit of the doubt. He's been nothing but pleasant.
It's absolutely, it is self-contradictory to think that there's a God that he can identify who wants him to call us to tell us that we've got it right, but won't tell us themselves. This is either someone who's off their medications, in which case it would be a mistake to continue, or it's a troll. I'd rather believe that you're just a troll, Jim.
At the end of the day, Jim, I'm excited to know that the God that we don't believe in thinks we're doing great. And now I'm going to tell all the theist callers that God likes us more than them, because God agrees with us more than them. And they'll have to grapple with that, because that's the faith of Jim the Wise. Anyway, we're going to move on now, Jim, but I hope you have an awesome rest of your day. Yeah, all right, take care, Jim.
If God ever gives you any useful testable information, call me back. And until then, don't.
They were a fun call. As I said, it's probably bullshit, but on the off chance it isn't. Hi, I'm a theist. I have no way to test anything that I'm saying. I don't expect to convince you, but I and my God think you're doing great. Pleasant. Thank you so much. Charming. That's great. Let's do the exact opposite of that pleasant, charming, great call, and take Chuck for calling in from you know what? You don't even get a funny statement. It's Texas. It's miserable ass Texas that Chuck is calling in from. Who's a theist. Now Chuck has called before, and we had big blowouts about Chuck being transphobic. And now Chuck is calling in to say, this is what's on the call screen. This is exactly what it says here. If I'm transphobic, then you're all theist phobic or God phobic. Several first of alls. And then also it says abortion has nothing to do with Trump. That's demonstrably silly, and I'm probably not gonna get into it too much, but like Chuck, you're on the line with Forrest and Matt. First of all, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Forrest? Always a pleasure. Matt, always a displeasure.
I'm sickly. You started off so well, because when you say I'm God-phobic, my answer is yes. I'm averse to the concept of God. So what?
Yeah, that was going to be my question, is can you define the word phobia for me? But yeah, the word phobia is either fear or strong aversion. And yeah, I am very much theist, or I would say theist phobic, because like theists themselves, that's whatever. I use anti-theist because I'm talking about theism. But like, yeah, God phobic for sure. I'm very averse to the idea of a God. I think that's an awful idea. This is not an accusation that means anything significant to me. Transphobia, however, is a serious accusation, because that's actually serious social dysfunction that actually really hurts people.
Okay, so there's the rub.
Wait, Chuck, I'm confused. We just both acknowledged that we're God-phobic, and all you did was chuckle quietly and then go on.
Yeah,
was that supposed to mean something to us?
Well, I mean, if your point was that we're God-phobic and we agreed, then I think we're done, right?
No.
I
mean, if you want to be chickens, but I mean,
if we want to be chickens,
you haven't laid down a challenge.
Hang on. I'm muting you for a second, because you do realize that for 20 years, I've spent multiple times for nearly every week of my life taking on all comers and all colors. And already you called in to say something that we just agreed with. You posed no challenge. What on earth could I possibly be afraid of if you don't pose any challenge?
So how about you let me talk and see if I pose a challenge?
Okay, here we go.
I'm going to mute you again. To yourself. You could have put it in the call screen.
We took this call, and right off the bat, you decided that you would, talk shit at me. And now you're like, why don't you let me talk? You could have put, as Forrest said, your message in the call screen. We're going to let you talk. But if you think suggesting that we're cowards is going to be some way to get a point across, I don't know why you can't just say, hi guys, irrespective of what conversation we've had in the past and irrespective of what I think of you guys, here's my point, and then make your point. That'd be really nice. I'd like you to make your point now, Chuck.
Okay, so my point that I'm going to make on this call. And the reason I put that stuff on this call screen was so you guys will actually take this call, because I can sort of understand how you guys think and egg you guys on with my.
Okay, I'm going to mute you again so that you listen to me.
God damn it!
When
dude.
I say I'm ready for you to make your point, I don't need all your preamble about how you're going to make your point or why you use this thing in the call screen, or you know how we think. Clearly, you don't know how we think unless your goal was to wind up on mute over and over again. So once again, I'm going to unmute you.
I also,
and,
hold on,
and
before
now
you do,
that you're unmuted, I would like you to make your point. Thank you.
But
my
I'm sorry,
point
before
is,
you make your point, Chuck, I also have a thing, is that like you just said, like, I couldn't put this in the call screen. I wanted you to actually take the call. So is what you're about to say something fucking brainless and shitty that's going to you're just trying to rile people up? You're just trying to egg us on and get us all upset? Is that the point?
I don't think you heard me well. I didn't say that because I'm always on mute. But I didn't say I couldn't put it in. I said I wanted to make sure you guys take the call. So my point is the same rationale used to accept the transgender ideology is the same rationale that theists use to accept their fate. It is all faith-based, no evidence.
That's demonstrably untrue.
Okay. So, anyways.
That's very obviously not true. Do you want to keep saying untrue shit, or do you want to actually have a conversation about what you just said? Because if you just called in to say a bunch of dumb shit, you can just say it to yourself. But
Absolutely.
What you just said is not accurate.
I try to call when Forrest is on because you're the biologist. So let's talk about this.
One of the several on these shows.
I've been looking for someone to actually convince me on this because I like to be sure on my stances, right? And so far, all the arguments I've seen for the transgender ideology is non-demonstrable. And yeah, so hopefully you can convince me. I've watched a lot of videos on you explaining it, Forrest. And even though I like it and I learned a lot of the terms, my only question, which I've gone around and I've asked transgender people I know, was, did any of these things Forrest said in this video, did any of you guys go through any of this treatment? Did any of you guys go through any of this test? And the answer is no. The only thing taken into account for someone to be transgender is their emotions and their words. That is all. So when you go on huge diatribes on science, on how science can, it's bimodal distribution or whatever, and science can actually tell those things apart, it's not actually being used. What is used is their words. So really, the science is useless. All science says is it's possible.
So really quickly, how do you tell what someone's chromosomes are?
I can't.
Right. But science can. So using your ideology here, right, is that, if you walk up to someone and you just immediately know their sex because whatever secondary sex characteristics, and so you can infer their chromosomal makeup, you're relying on your eyes and their words, not the science, which we both agree you can karyotype somebody and understand what their chromosomes look like. So the whole argument you're making here that people aren't using all these different tests to figure out whether they're trans or intersex or this or that is redundant and pointless, because you don't do that either in your worldview, nor do you expect anybody to, because that's silly. Also, it's demonstrable that sex and gender are different things. We're talking about transgender people. You talking about bimodal distribution, all the things, you're talking about sex traits. Sex and gender are different. So you're conflating. You say you watch all my videos. You didn't pay very good attention then.
Okay, so my response to that is I'm actually not conflating it. And I think they're highly related. And the way I think they're related, I think gender is a dependent variable of sex. So for example, in math, if you have y is equal to 2x, immediately you define x, you have defined y. And I think that's the definition. Okay, I'm just making sure, right?
Because what? I think your phone went to sleep. Tap your phone and wake it up, because I can't hear you.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that.
Why did you feel the need to make sure that I knew what a variable was?
Why? I just want, for all the people listening, not just about you guys, right?
Okay.
There might not be some smart people. So anyways, if it is a dependent variable and okay.
No, it's just we're gonna just have to go through it step by step here. You understand that sex and gender are different, right?
Sure.
Cool. And you understand that sex and gender are not necessarily congruent, right?
So that's where I disagree. As I said, which is why I explained the dependent variable. I think
which
gender
would mean if that's the case, then gender would be boiled down to and predicted by sex. If that's what
Yes.
you're saying is true, right?
Yes.
Then why
Yes.
do we see, even in just individual cultures, why do we see gender norms, roles, and expectations change over time? Did their sexes change over time too?
Okay, so now I think we're going into
I'm sorry, Forrest asked a
different
question. Forrest asked a question, which was whether or not the sexes changed over time. He didn't ask you for now. I think we're going in. He just asked a question. Can you answer that?
okay, so the reason why I think we see different things from different cultures and things
Nobody
like
asked
that.
you why the reason why you say it. He asked you if the sex was changing over time. That's a yes or no question.
Oh, no.
Okay. So then now I will ask you, if sex and gender are actually dependent and you can predict gender by sex, then how is it possible that gender norms, expectations, identities change over time?
Okay, so if you would allow me some time to flesh out my ideas and actually explain the way I'm thinking about this instead of just
It depends on whether or not what you say is
yes
true.
or no answer. So just straw manning me
That
to a yes
wasn't a
or no
straw
answer.
man. I asked you
I'm sorry,
that's
nobody
not what
straw
I'm
manned
doing.
you.
I
Why
asked
can't you
a
answer the question you're asked?
That's what I'm trying to say. If I answered your question the way you want me to, it's not going to flesh out my ideas. Are you going to argue against a straw man?
We're not
So do you
here.
want me to
We're
flesh out
not
my
here
ideas
to
or
allow
not?
you to flesh out your ideas. You answer a
Of course
question.
you're not.
We
You're
don't.
thinking,
We
Matt.
don't.
Of course you're
We
not.
don't have. We don't. So we're not asking you to flesh out your ideas. We're asking you to answer a specific question.
Because here's the
Yes.
thing, man. I talk to transphobes all the time. I've heard a lot of this shit before. I'm not on this show for you to get up here and preach and present your thesis. This is not a debate between you and I. It's a conversation of which I'm kind of like on the driver's seat here because I have to make the show good. So I'm asking you specific questions to dig directly into the point of what you're saying. I'm not giving you 45 minutes to tap dance around all these other things you like. You said
You can.
I
that
wasn't gonna
sex
do
and
that.
gender are. You said that sex and gender are linked, and that gender is predicted by sex, and that they are just there's no such thing as gender incongruence with sex. That would mean that if gender is changing over time, sex must also be changing over time. If y equals 2x, and now all of a sudden x is different, y is also going to be different. So either sex changes over time along with gender, or sex and gender are different. We know for sure that gender does change over time and it varies across cultures as well. So, what are you saying? How is that possible if sex and gender are the same thing?
Okay. So I disagree that gender is changing over time. So first of all, let me define what I am talking about when I say gender, so we don't keep talking over each other, right? So when I say
You're gonna pick
gender,
some
I mean
other
the
definition.
classification.
Got it.
I mean the different classification of men and women. It doesn't matter all the things around it. It doesn't matter all the things and how it's expressed. I mean that as long as there's those two classifications of man and woman, those do not change. Do you agree?
Okay, how do you classify? No, I don't agree. But let's go with yours. How do
Okay.
you classify woman or man?
Okay, so now that's where I say they're inextricably linked to sex. A man is an adult male human. A woman is an adult female human, and that's it.
Okay,
So once you define what
kick
male
the can
is,
down the road. So
What?
yes, please do that. Tell me, what does male mean in humans?
So
It
that
means different things
so
for
that's why I
different
say I'm
species.
here to talk to a biologist, right? Because you're the biologist, and I want to get that definition from you on what a male and a female is, because we seem to define those for every other species. But then when we come to humans, now it's a problem. So I don't really understand that.
I'm asking you. You're the one making the claim. My position is that sex and gender are different things.
Yeah.
Neither one is binary, nor are they necessarily congruent. You're making
Yeah,
the
so my
claim
pos-
that actually
Okay.
they are strictly binary and they are linked together and they fall perfectly in these boxes. So what is male?
So male, in my limited knowledge of biology, will be the human that has the XY gene, the XY chromosome, and linked with the sex that produces, I guess, the sperm to fertilize the egg. While female will be the one that actually carries
So that's
the
two
an
things.
excess.
You said that they have
Yeah,
XY
go.
chromosomes and they produce sperm. Yeah.
Basically, I mean, the sex linked with that. The person's sex linked with that. Yes.
Okay. So then if a man no longer produces sperm, is he no longer a man?
No, it's still the sex linked with that. Does he have XY chromosome?
How do you know?
So
Okay,
this is
so
a,
it boils down. So then it boils down to XY chromosomes, because if it actually doesn't have anything to do with sperm production, it's just linked. Whatever linked means. Are you saying it's like a trend? It's generally that way.
so let me define it from the female perspective. The reason why I said that the sex linked, because
Sure.
people always bring up
Jump to the next
when
thing.
I
Why
say
not?
when I say no, it's still defining the same thing. It's just I'm gonna take it from the female perspective because that gives a better example. So the female perspective, when I say XX chromosome and sex linked with the ability to get pregnant, then people ask, what about women who are born without the ability to get pregnant? Like, are they not women? So that's why I said that additional part, because even though they cannot give birth, they're still linked with that sex, basically, and they have the
Okay.
XX chromosome.
So
there
then,
you go.
what about women with Swyer syndrome?
I don't know what that is.
Sawyer syndrome is where women have XY chromosomes. And we have case studies of women with XY chromosomes who can get pregnant and give birth and have done so. So do you
How
agree
does a
with
woman
me
have
that
XY chromosome?
It's I told you it's a thing that exists. I can get into it if you want, but it's not necessary. The point is, either you agree with me that sometimes women don't have XY chromosomes, or you think everyone with XY chromosomes is a man, so you agree with me that men can sometimes get pregnant. Which one is it?
Yeah, let's get into it, because no, I disagree. Why would someone with XY chromosome get pregnant? Yeah.
I just told you. It's called Sawyer syndrome, SWYER. You can go to Google
So why
Scholar,
are
look
they
up
named
case
women?
studies.
Why are they women? What qualifies them as women?
I can easily. I'm not trying to define woman for you, dude. I can do it later, but I'm working in your framework right now. I'm showing you that you don't have a leg to stand on here. There is no way in which you can boil gender down into a sex category, and I don't think you can define sex categories properly either. These are people with XY chromosomes who are anatomically and phenotypically female. They are chromosomally male, and they are phenotypically and anatomically female, and they are pregnant and giving birth. Everything about them from the outside looking in is woman, is female, and yet they have XY chromosomes. So, do you agree that not all women have XX chromosomes, or do you agree that some men can get pregnant, or both?
So I guess I will have to agree, if I'm basing it on XY chromosomes, that I guess some men can give birth, which must be a huge anomaly. I mean, anomalies happen, so I guess sure.
Cool. So these people who are walking around phenotypically female with uterus, ovaries, ovarian tubes, a vagina, secondary sex characteristics, they dress like women, they talk like women, they act like women, they feel like women, they are women in all intents and purposes. You think these are actually men who just sometimes can give birth and look like girls?
Yes. And
cool.
If you let
so
me
then you
understand.
Ideas. So then you understand that sex and gender are different and not necessarily linked, because these people are living their entire lives as women and acting and behaving as women and dressing and being women, as you just agreed to, and yet they're actually men. So sometimes males can be women because sex and gender are different.
I have a quick question that relates to this. Before we understood chromosomes and before we had any opportunity to check chromosomes, the person that Forrest just described, Chuck would think and identify as a woman just like any other, correct?
Correct. We
How
can
many
be
people's
tricked.
How many people's chromosomes are you aware of, and how do you tell?
So
He already
I am
said he
not
doesn't
aware of
check 'em.
anybody's. Okay, so
Cool.
I am not
So
aware of anybody's.
in the absence of knowing chromosomes, then you say you don't know their gender.
Okay. Good. Now I like that point. All right, I have this argument a lot.
What do you mean you like that point? You just acknowledge
No,
that you
I'm
don't know
saying
what
I like
someone's
the
gender
point.
is if you don't know their chromosomes.
I'm saying, okay, so again,
He
if
also
you see
just
someone
said
dressed
that
as a
sex and
cop,
gender are different anyway.
if you see someone dressed as a cop, right, you can assume it's a cop and you can treat him like a cop, he can act like a cop, but if he's
Yep.
not actually registered with any police department, he's not a cop, even though everyone treats him like a cop. So
Yeah,
anyways,
that's because the
depends on his
definition
cop
of police
chromosomes.
officer is someone who is legally identified as a police officer. That's not
Exactly.
anything to do
And-
with what we're talking about.
Yes,
You
it
keep
is.
saying
Yes,
exactly.
it is.
You keep saying exactly as if I confirmed your point. And in fact,
Yes,
Forrest
you
and I are
just
sitting here
did.
rebutting you. Keep interrupting me, motherfucker. I sat here quietly through the whole thing. Forrest is going to get back to schooling you, but keep trying to talk over me and see how that works. Forrest, continue, please. Thanks.
The point is, Chuck, you just admitted that sex and gender are different things and men can get pregnant. So I don't know why we're continuing this call.
That was not the point of the call. And again, I did not admit that. So this Sawyer thing is something I'm going to have to research. And I'm not sure.
Then we'll walk through it again, because what you
It's something
just
I'm going to have
said
to research.
is that what you
should
just
research
said
beforehand.
is that everybody with XY chromosomes is actually male. And so these people, these women with Sawyer syndrome, they are phenotypically female, anatomically female, capable of female reproduction, and they are giving birth to children, which means these are men that can give birth. But also, you also said that they are acting like women, behaving like women, feeling like women, thinking like women, dressing like women, presenting as women. All of these are gender things. So if they are if they are chromosomally male, but you said
but it
they
doesn't
were.
make them women.
Does your
You
opinion make
said
them
they
women?
were.
When? I said they were men. I said if you have XY chromosome, then you are a man, I guess, that can give birth. Sure, it's an anomaly. I'm guessing it's a very rare one.
Let's try it a different way.
Forrest,
Let's try it a different
Forrest,
way.
please. Can
What
I
about
try? I know you're a reasonable person.
No.
Can I try and ask you some
I'm
questions?
trying to point out the issues. I'm not here to
I'm
fucking
trying to
answer your
learn
questions.
from
I'm
you.
here to
That's
point
why I
out why
called.
you
No, you're
don't
not.
know any of this. You're not here to learn.
Matt, always
I don't
a
think that's
displeasure.
true at all.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't give a
I don't
fuck
think you're here
whether
to learn at
I
all.
hope it is a displeasure for you. I genuinely hope that it is always a displeasure for you because you are
kidding.
an awful,
I love you,
terrible
Matt.
thinker. You're a terrible thinker who is a problematic fucking person. So I love the
Look.
fact that you don't like me because you're garbage.
Okay. If
What
you
about
guys won't
this?
even
Let's
let me
try
ask
another
you
one
questions.
for fun.
No, it's
You guys
not. This
wouldn't
is
even
not
let-
a
not
show
here
for you
to
to call and ask us questions. This is a show for you to call and tell us what you believe and why. And you'll answer our questions or you'll fuck off.
Like, I have totally different things for you to just see if your ideas stand up to scrutiny. And I feel like you're dodging to the next thing that's comfortable for you. The same way that you dodge when we're talking about the difference between males and females.
Absolutely not dodging anything, but go ahead. Go ahead first.
Okay, you said all males have XY chromosomes. Do only males have XY chromosomes?
Do only males have XY chromosomes?
In humans,
So,
specifically.
In humans. It's a great question. I would say yes.
Okay. And do males only have XY chromosomes? Meaning, is that exclusive that all males have XY chromosomes? And if you have XY chromosomes, you are a male. That is period, end of discussion. Yeah. XY equals male.
Yeah. So let me say this. So anyone who has the XY chromosome is a male. Anyone who has the XX chromosome is a female. If there's anything in between, we have names for those as well. So yes, anyone who has the XY chromosome alone is a male. And then anything else,
okay, so
we probably have a name for it.
So then you're admitting there's stuff in between, so you know that sex is not binary.
Sure.
Okay, so we agree that sex isn't binary. That's good. if everyone who has XX chromosomes is female, what
There-
about a
I'm
male
admitting
who
there are
has
anomalies. Let me make sure we're clear. I'm admitting there are anomalies. Sorry, I wasn't.
Okay,
there are
so then
anomalies,
you
right?
aren't saying. So if there are anomalies and you're admitting that, then it is not true that everyone who has XX chromosomes is female and everyone has XY chromosomes is male.
No. And that's what I'm saying. Like, there are anomalies. Like, it is the standard.
So So you're saying everyone with XY chromosomes is male except for when they're not, but it always is the case except sometimes it isn't.
So if you have XY chromosome, you're a male. If you have anything other than that, you are not a male. That's a true binary there.
Okay.
Same thing with females.
So then someone with De La Chapelle syndrome would have XX chromosomes and would still be phenotypically, anatomically male and would have a penis and testes and such. And so those people with penises are actually female. So you agree with me that some women have penises.
You keep bringing these how many?
Hang on.
Yes or no?
Anomalies.
Yes or no?
I know you. We're going to make you answer that question about whether or not there are some women with penises. But I want you to be clear about something, Chuck. You keep dismissing. I don't need you to tell me to go ahead. I need you to shut up and listen. Laugh all you want, fuzzball. Listen up.
Yeah. I'm listening.
Then shut your pie hole, or I'll mute you and you'll listen while on mute. It's your choice. But you keep objecting to these things that Forrest is raising because they're all exceptions. There's some normative view of XXXY, but there's also XYY and other things. And then there's also Y genes that don't have the SRY component. So they're not producing that stuff. And so Forrest can go through and describe all of the complexities surrounding the biology related to sex, which affects appearance and phenotype, secondary sexual characteristics, as well as primary characteristics. And you just keep going, oh, you're pointing to the exceptions. Here's the thing. The transgender community is an exception. They are outliers. They are a tiny fraction of the population. And so, of course, we're going to be talking about exceptions. The issue here is that whether or not they're a tiny fraction of the population shouldn't influence whether or not they have rights and whether or not they are worthy of consideration. What you're doing in this argument, the same thing you're trying to do in real life, which is say, oh, that's some outlier, so we just get to ignore it and pretend like it doesn't exist. You can do that for statistical data. You don't get to do that with human beings. So stop dismissing the outliers, because the outliers are who we're talking about when we're talking about trans folks. And please answer the question about whether you're agreeing with him that some women have a penis.
And you want a yes or no answer to this, I'm guessing? Okay.
Well, that is a yes or no question. So,
yeah, sorry, we have to explain these things. I get it. Some people don't understand yes or no questions, but yeah, it is.
Yeah. So, I guess my answer would be yes, sure.
Cool. Or some women have penises.
I agree. Some women have penises, some men have uteruses, some men can give birth because sex and gender are different
happy
things.
With yourself?
Thrilled.
Are you guys happy with yourself?
I'm ecstatic with myself. Are you happy with yourself?
The reason I ask that is because when you ask these yes or no questions and demand just a yes, the answers are not.
I asked you if you were satisfied with yourself. That's a yes or no question.
Yes, I am.
Cool. Congrats. Next.
Okay, Matt.
I'm not. What?
Yeah, so I wanted to respond to what you said of how I'm treating. So never once have I said.
I'm not interested in your response to what I said.
That's fair. Okay.
I still have other questions about sex and gender for Chuck.
Forrest has got lots of stuff.
Forrest, please. You're being very reasonable, so please, I will ask this. As a favor, can we go to talking to actual transgender issues? Because that's why I actually called.
No.
And I don't think you've heard any of my...
Yeah, but you shot your own argument in the foot when you said that sex and gender are the same thing. So if I sit here and talk about intersex people all day long, I am talking about trans people according to you, even though I can say that transgender people and intersex people aren't necessarily overlapping people. I know that, but you don't. So for me to sit here and go through all these different things is demonstrating that you, despite the fact that you think sex and gender are actually linked, which is wrong, still agree with me that men can get pregnant and give birth.
That's not wrong.
Some women have penises. And say, and that you can look and act and exist as a woman, but actually be male, and you can look and exist and act as a man and actually be female. We agree on all of these things. So I don't see the point in you being transphobic.
No, we don't. So everything
What
that
don't
we
we
have
agree
said,
with? Everything that I just said, everything I
Yes.
just said is stuff that you have agreed to.
okay. So a female XX chromosome, you said whatever syndrome, whatever, can have a penis, phenotypically look like a man.
De La
And I
Chapelle.
said that's still a woman. And the same one with
a
the
woman with a
Sawyer.
penis.
Right, that's still a woman, right? XX chromosome, it's still a woman.
Woman with
So
a penis.
if you actually want to hear my ideas and why I think the way I'm thinking, which I don't think you guys are actually interested in that, and one of the things I noticed
we're
with
actually
this show,
not.
I would.
yeah, I
would
noticed
like
that.
you to fucking
I
just
shouldn't,
pretend you are.
I shouldn't speak for both of us. I have zero interest in your ideas, Chuck, because you are uninformed and misinformed on the science. You shouldn't be here educating anybody. You should be sitting here like a child at Forrest's feet, listening to what the
Matt,
biology
I promise
actually
you, there
says,
is no issue
so that you can learn.
you can
See,
debate
you can yell
better
at me
than
and try
me.
and talk over me, but you know what's never going to happen? You're never going to win like that because I power the mute button. I am the chief of my domain. I am in charge of all things that I see. Right now, I only see that camera and that mic button. But yes, I genuinely, the only reason I'm interested in the call is because Forrest is interested in the hope of possibly educating you, but at a minimum, using you to educate other people who are similarly misinformed. Because at this point, you forcibly said that sex and gender were necessarily linked when they are not necessarily linked. By definition, if your chromosomes can be XX, XY, XYY, and in all of those situations, you might have a gender that is man, woman, or other, for all three of them, then we've already demonstrated that sex and gender aren't necessarily linked. Are sex and gender normatively linked, like in people's heads? And are there generalities that are true? Yes, there are absolutely generalities that are true.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think what's really important to point out is that the point of everything that I've been saying to you this entire time, Chuck, the point of this entire call so far has been to demonstrate that even like it doesn't matter which position you're coming from. If you agree with me and also modern science that sex and gender are different things and that one does not necessarily preclude the other, or if you just decide for whatever reason you've decided that they're actually inextricably linked in this way, either way, you come to the position of transgender people existing and being valid in their identities.
You haven't
That's
heard
what I'm
my
talking about.
point. You haven't actually heard my point.
You told me everything you need.
See,
sorry, Matt.
Here's the confusing thing.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Matt.
You keep objecting that we haven't heard your point. We don't need to hear your point. We've heard you acknowledge Forrest's point, and Forrest's points are the science. All you're doing is dismissing outliers. You don't get to do that with people.
So Matt,
and the thing you have to understand, Chuck, is that I don't like. You keep saying you have all these points. I'm willing to entertain some of them a little bit, but I don't need to go down your rabbit trail and let you spew some bigoted nonsense on this show when I can so easily dismiss everything you're saying with basic biology. So there's no reason for me to do that. I'm waiting for you to let me finish a sentence without trying to cut me off before I let you speak. And especially considering the fact that when we talk about these intersex conditions, we talk about these intersex people, right? The World Health Organization, the UN, the numbers that we have on this is that this is, at a very conservative estimate, about 1.7% of the population, as you say, anomalies, right? Yet 1.7% of 8 billion people on this planet is 136 million people. That is a population the size of Russia, Chuck. So you're sitting here and telling me that you have such a firm grasp on biology and on humanity that you know that there are only men and women and Russians. But we don't talk about that because they're just anomalies. And that's a ridiculous thing to say, to just write off that many people as something that you don't have to think about and that you can fit in this parochial little box. That's a ridiculous claim. It's wholly unscientific.
Okay. Can I? Oh, okay. So, my point of what I was trying to say when I made this call was simply this. Not once have I ever said transgenders shouldn't exist and have access to whatever rights that they want. They're adults and they can make decisions on their own.
Did.
Okay, good. However, in our society, in the world, there are two genders, and we have constant systems that show these. We have prisons for male and female.
That's
we have the
objectively
military
not
as
well.
Please, you
See,
talk
here
for
again.
what? Can I just
Here again.
Oh,
I
guess
have
who
to- I
doesn't
don't
get to
know.
talk
Again,
anymore today?
Chuck, again, I have to cut you off when you say something that is obviously not true. Saying that we have two genders in the world is an insane thing to say. That shows that you've never actually taken the time to look around the fucking world where there are dozens and dozens of cultures throughout time and space, even around today, that have more than two genders, that have diverse gender cultures, that acknowledge transgender people as a different gender spectrum. Matt, what are you saying?
I just want to point out this argument is fallacious and obviously fallacious. To say there are only two genders because we have men's prisons and women's prisons is
that's
just as fallacious. Is just as fallacious as nuns saying there are only right-handed people because they beat you with the ruler until you stopped writing with your left hand. Your argument is fallacious, Chuck. Try again.
The transgender ideology argument is fallacious.
Is that you're not. All I'm saying, Chuck, is that you clearly haven't taken the time to actually check to see that actually there aren't just two genders in the world. Even just in your culture, even just in Western society, gender norms, as I started this conversation with, have changed dramatically. Men in the 1600s used to weep with emotion, used to faint, used to wear makeup, used to wear high heels, used to wear powdered wigs, all sorts of things that you certainly wouldn't consider masculine man traits today because gender norms changed. And around the world, we have plenty of cultures with gender diversity, with more than two genders. What you are doing is saying, in my culture, things look this way. Therefore, that's the way that it always is and could only ever be across all of nature and all of science. And that is a ridiculous, unscientific claim.
I'm gonna put you back on, Chuck, but pay attention. I'm going to give you a pro tip. When I point out that your argument is fallacious, the correct response is, oh yeah, that is a fallacious argument. I'll stop using it. The incorrect response is, the transphobic arguments are fallacious. You're in this childish, I know you are, but what am I sort of thing. So you presented a fallacious argument, correct it.
I did not present a fallacious. You're gonna.
Oh, yes, you did, because you said there are only two genders, and the proof of that is that we have men's prisons and women's prisons. We also have the NBA and the WNBA. By your reasoning, when we only had the NBA, does that mean there were only men and women didn't exist? And when there were only prisons for men, did that mean that women didn't exist too? Your argument is fallacious. I'm sorry you don't understand that, but that's the truth.
So, if the transgender ideology...
I'm sorry, this transgender ideology thing you keep coming back to, I need you to address the fact that you made a fallacious argument, and how are you going to correct it before we move on? You don't get to just move on to the next thing. Are you going to cry?
I did not make a fallacious argument.
Okay, I'm going to mute you again. I realize that you're not particularly getting this, but fallacies aren't subject to opinion. When you have a formal fallacy, after this, therefore, because this, post hoc, ergo propter hoc, when you have a conclusion that is contingent upon an assumption that is false, and you're stringing the two together, you have constructed a fallacy. When you say there are only two genders, and the proof of this is that we have men's prisons and women's prisons, that argument is fallacious, and you need to address that before we can move on.
Okay, that argument is fallacious.
Now, thank you.
Awesome.
Now, I'm going to mute you again because it amuses me. Why is it that I had to start and stop and mute you several times to get you to acknowledge your argument was fallacious. And previous to this last interruption, you flat out said it wasn't fallacious. So are you actually acknowledging that it was fallacious, or are you just saying it's fallacious so you can move on to your next point?
I'm saying it's fallacious so I can move on.
Yeah, you're saying it's fallacious so you can move on to the next point. While I appreciate your honesty, fuck you. You're really bad at arguing. And the fact that you're willing to acknowledge that you don't understand that it was actually fallacious, and that you're only acknowledging it was fallacious so that you can move on to your next point, disqualifies you from moving on to a next point. I will leave it up to Forrest as to whether or not he wants to dig in more with you or not.
We're already over time. I would like to a little bit further, if it's cool with everybody. Just check one or two more things that Chuck.
I'm
thinks,
playing
and then-
chess. You
then
have
I'm
the
good to
mute
move
button.
on. Chuck, since
Hello,
you
Forrest.
just said that you're actually not, that you don't actually believe your argument was fallacious, and you're just saying that, I will now continue to demonstrate why your argument is fallacious. Fallacious in a culture with more than two genders. If many of them had any serious political power right now, they would certainly have more than two prisons, right? Does that mean that two genders exist in this culture, but more than two genders exist in other culture, and it's entirely contingent on what kind of like penal structure you have?
Let me see if I can steelman your question. So you're saying in a society that has a lot of resources, and if they had a lot of transgender people, they would make multiple prisons to fit those genders, all the different genders? Is that what you're
No.
saying?
What I'm saying
Okay.
is there are plenty of cultures around the world that have more than two genders. Now, most of them have been suppressed through genocide and colonization. But let's say, for example, that one of them, pick your favorite, maybe the Native Americans here weren't subject to genocide, and they now have prisons, right? And so they have men and women, and they also have twin spirit people who are either, transgender or agender or gender fluid or whatever like that. They would probably, in that scenario, or at least for this argument, would construct different prisons for those people, or maybe just one prison. Does the quantity of prison types actually have anything to do with the science of biological sex and gender?
Okay. No, it does not.
Cool. So then you agree, not just to say it, but you would actually agree in that scenario that saying, we know there are two genders, we have only two kinds of prisons, is a silly thing to say, right?
Yes, it is a silly thing to say.
Don't believe him.
Cool. Glad we
I'm
actually
quiet.
finally agree on
Forrest,
that.
Can I
It's
ask
fine.
a question? Can I ask a
Nope.
question? I've been pretty nice. Can I ask a
No, you
question?
haven't.
It's not about being
I've been
nice. It's
awesome,
the
I
fact that,
think.
like I just said a minute ago, you
Been
haven't,
terrible.
because you've spewed a bunch of nonsense and then tried to defend that nonsense with more nonsense. And every time
Hold
we
on,
present
Forrest,
something to you that shows
can
that
I ask
your
a question?
ideology here is actually ideology, as opposed to trans people, which is not an ideology, it's just science. You are actually defending an ideology. And every time we defend that or
I'm
show
not
that
muted.
to you, you just
Sorry, I
write
thought
it
it was
off
muted.
as exceptions and whatever. Oh, it's fine.
So
The point is,
Forrest.
like that's dishonest and lame.
Forrest. So far,
Me.
you guys have argued with yourselves. You've not actually heard anything I've said, because every time I want to talk, when I mentioned
Okay, I unmuted
caught
because
up
that's
in-
a lie. You presented
caught
an
up and
argument which
muted.
I showed
was
was
gonna let
fallacious,
him-
which I showed was fallacious. You're a
yeah, good
liar.
job, Matt. Keep
You're a
going.
liar. I
Okay.
am going to keep going because you're a liar. You presented an argument.
gonna
I
let him
demonstrated
finish.
how it was fallacious, and you said that we haven't. We've just been arguing with ourselves. You are a liar.
Literally, you've heard nothing I said
You
all the way,
are a
because I
liar.
haven't been.
Chuck,
I addressed your argument
Wait.
and showed everybody who's watching it's fallacious. We're going to get multiple clips out of here, and at the end of it, it's going to be you lying and me
I'm
calling
happy
you a
for
liar.
you, Matt.
You're a liar.
and
You're a
everyone will
lying
be able to
liar who
see.
lies. You can't
Everyone will be
argue
able
your way out of a wet paper bag. You are pretty stupid. Anything else?
That's come
Chuck,
on. I haven't said any point
like,
actually.
you
this
have.
call.
Forrest
You
gave
very
you,
No, I
Forrest
haven't.
gave you an
And
education.
you guys are going to call the call and think you made a
Forrest gave
point,
you
but you are just
education on the
chickens
science.
who don't actually have chances to listen to the idea. Because
Do you realize
You-
you could book a debate with me anytime you want, and then you'd have no excuse to get in here and call me?
that.
Shut up. I'm going to mute you right now. You can book a debate with me, you little coward. And then instead of calling in and calling me a coward, we'll see who knows their stuff. because Forrest has already educated you and you're saying, oh, he didn't say anything. And I pointed out your argument was fallacious. And you're like, you didn't even address my arguments. You're a liar. Book me for a debate and I will school you like the idiot you are.
I would love to book you for a debate, Matt. I bet you can argue against me. But so far, you guys have not heard.
Go to the website and book it. You don't get to do it now. Matter of fact, you don't get to speak to me now. Go book the website. Prove I'm a coward. Prove it.
You are such a chicken, Matt. Keep hitting the mute button.
I'm hitting the mute. Oh, you think hitting the mute button proves I'm a coward? That's also a fallacious argument. Are you capable of making any argument that isn't fallacious?
An argument isn't fallacious.
I'm sorry.
Transgenderism.
That was a yes or no question. The question was, are you capable of making any argument that isn't fallacious? And that was a yes or no question. So I don't know why this is so difficult. But book a debate.
I have made one
if you like.
Night. However,
I'm waiting for you to book a debate.
Hey, I will book it.
Book it. I bet you don't.
I bet I do, chicken, and I bet you don't take it.
I will. All you got to do is book the debate.
Oh my God! I actually looked up to you, Matt. I really did. But this is so.
I'm sorry, your phone's breaking up right now. You looked up to me?
I actually looked up to you, but this is so embarrassing. You wouldn't even let
what's
me.
Embarrassing? What's embarrassing is that you keep saying you'll book a debate, but you don't. And you want to call me a coward when I'm here addressing your issues. And you want to pretend that your arguments aren't, and that we're going to pretend your arguments aren't fallacious when they are.
You can't even let someone flesh out their ideas. I mean,
well, that's a lie as well. I've done plenty of debates and I've had plenty of calls on all these shows where I let people flesh out their ideas. What I'm not going to let you do is lie. So when you stop lying, then you get to talk.
Forrest.
Me.
Are you still there? Forrest, please.
Yeah.
Steel man my argument for me and just say back to me so I make sure, and then I will log off or whatever. Go book this, because can you just steel man what my point was?
What I need you to understand, can I steel man what your point was? Yeah, easily.
Yeah.
What I need, in fact, I'm going to do it while I'm explaining this. I'm going to do it while I'm explaining this. The issue that you don't seem to understand is that I don't owe you any time here. And so what's happening is that you called in with a whole bunch of different things.
So what? Fuck you guys. Yeah. What?
So there it is. So just to be clear,
I didn't say
you called in this whole time
whining. I didn't say that, by the way. I said, oh my fucking God.
You just
did.
I didn't say
oh my fucking God.
I didn't say you said it. I said, did you say it? And then you said it. You could have just said, no, I didn't say that. But instead you decided to actually say it. I don't know why. Why are you such a liar?
You're right. I'm sorry. I lost my cool there. I apologize, Forrest. I don't apologize to you, man.
Cool.
It's, dude, I like this.
You
this
started
is why
off
this
by
call isn't
talking
going
shit
the
at
way
me.
you think
What did you expect?
Like this is this
is
why this call isn't going the way you want. And like this whole time,
you would act your age,
it has
Matt.
been.
I'm sorry.
And even now, you're just yelling at Matt rather than actually listening.
You started the call by talking shit at me, and you expected me to act my age. I am acting my age. I'm an adult who points out fallacies and who mutes people who are liars. Book the debate.
It's just like
hang up now.
The problem is, no.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Forrest. Sorry to cut you off.
God,
go ahead, Forrest.
Like
Sorry to cut you off. Sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
It's fine. This is the problem with this whole call. Is like it is very, very clear that you are more interested in having a fight and fucking poking at people and insulting people and acting like a just common internet troll than actually learning.
I never insulted you,
called in. You started in by insulting my co-host. What's the point? And you haven't insulted me.
Hey, don't
How's
forget
that an
about the
insult?
balls while you're down there.
Just insane. And like,
You guys
and
are
now
so
at this
emotional.
point, I haven't
I'm not
fucking
the-
even raised my voice. You've insulted the hell out of Matt, and he's frustrated with you. And now I'm sitting here just trying to calm you down while you scream, fuck you guys, losing your cool, and then call me emotional? When all I've done for this entire call is give you scientific facts that you have just
I meant
written
Matt
off.
is emotional,
Oh, of course.
not you,
Of course.
Forrest.
When
You're
you said
awesome.
you guys, when
Don't
you
forget
said
about
you
the-
guys,
down
what
there.
you actually meant was just Matt again. It's just
Okay,
pointless,
Forrest.
dude. So here, let me
Okay.
now steel man your argument and explain why this
yes,
call
Go
fucking
ahead.
sucks, Chuck. Is that
Okay.
you called in wanting to present us this whole fucking thesis that you've come up with about why trans people don't exist or whatever. And the only thing that you were able to get to, the main structure, the main foundation of this point, is that trans people don't actually fundamentally exist because sex and gender are inextricably linked, and there is no such thing as gender incongruence. I then demonstrated several different examples of where that, in your position, not my position, in your position, still lands you at the same conclusions that I'm at. So your entire fucking transphobic ideology here is rooted in fallacious bigotry. And after demonstrating that to you several times, you then said, well, you aren't letting me flesh out your argument because it's not necessary. It's not necessary for me to hear all these other points when the foundation of your ideology is bullshit. For the same reason that I don't need a Christian calling in and giving me a fucking 10-hour sermon over every single thing that they believe about the Bible if they can't even demonstrate what God they believe in and why. That's all the call's going to get to, and that's where the call's going to end. Same exact situation here. You're on a call-in show. You're not on a formal debate. I hope you book one with Matt. But at the end of the day, you're here to present the arguments that you can. And by the end of it, it's going to go as well as it can possibly go with your temperament and your willingness to admit your own faults. And all you've shown us is that when you're backed into a corner, you lie and say, okay, yeah, it's fallacious, but I'm only going to say that so we can move the conversation on. Or you throw into a temper tantrum and just say, fuck Matt and fuck you guys and fuck this and that. It's totally worthless for me to continue the conversation and to hear you out because you're not emotionally mature enough to have the conversation.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry you feel that way, Forrest. Feel bad.
You've
disappointed you.
that.
I didn't mean to. If there was someone else on this call, maybe I would have done better. But Matt, as I said, always a displeasure.
It's not Matt's fault that you cannot defend your beliefs.
We were having a pleasant conversation, Forrest. Be honest. It is obviously Matt's fault.
We were showing over and over and over that your fundamental idea, your thesis statement of your position is rooted in ignorance and bigotry. We showed that several times. And only when you allowed Matt to give you the out of being in an emotional war with somebody who can click a mute button, because that's his job. When someone's being petulant and mean and insulting people, that is his job to mute them and make it a good and decent and watchable show. You use that then as an out so that you don't have to have a serious conversation. And now you're at this point where you're just saying, well, fuck Matt and fuck this. And are you going to hang up on me? Because I think at the end of the day, that's what you want. You want to be able to get out of this comfortably in a way where you can walk away and say, I won. They're so triggered. They're so emotional. They couldn't have a conversation with me. When at the end of the day, everybody, you can watch this back, dude. It's the exact same thing as the last time you called in. Every leading medical organization disagrees with you. The World Health Organization agrees with you. Modern biology disagrees with you. Genetics disagrees with you. Everybody disagrees with you. And you...
I'm the problem.
Authority. Matt.
You, and you don't even fucking understand what an argument from authority is. You consistently, Chuck, will start the call by saying, I'm not well versed in this. I don't know. I'm asking you as a biologist to educate me, and then end the call by saying, I don't care what literal introductory biology textbooks say. I, Chuck, know better. So I don't think that you're serious, man. I think you've got to believe okay, let me ask you then. We'll give you the opportunity. The World Health Organization is very clear that sex and gender are different things, and neither one is binary, and they're not inextricably linked, and that trans people exist. Are they wrong, or are you wrong?
I have never disagreed that trans people do not exist. Never said that.
You
I've
just
never
I'm
did.
sorry.
disagreed
The
with that.
You
question
do.
Forrest asked was were they wrong or were you wrong? Which you need to answer the question you're asked. I'm sorry this is so difficult for you,
Also,
but it's clearly is my fault.
saying that sex and gender are inextricably linked and that there's no such thing as gender
Am I
incongruence
muted?
is saying that trans people don't exist. That is
No,
what
we're
that is
waiting for you to
saying.
answer Forrest's question.
I'm probably muted.
No, you're not muted.
You're
We're waiting
not.
for you to answer Forrest's
Oh.
question.
Well,
The
I'm-
World Health
okay.
Organization says sex and gender are distinct and neither are binary. Are you agreeing with them or not?
So, yes,
I'm
I am
sorry. The
agreeing.
question was, are you agreeing with them or not?
I just say yes, Matt.
No, you didn't. You started with
Go-
so. It's
go
a
back
yes or
to
no
playing chess.
question. I tell you what, I'll play chess whenever I feel like it, and I'll interrupt you whenever I feel like it.
Sure,
I'm
chicken.
sorry that
I'll
I'm
see you in
sorry
a
that you
debate.
think. Then book the debate.
just
What are you
so
waiting for?
fucking
Why are you
boring.
still doing this? Just go and book the debate. My
Damn it.
email address.
It's
What
My
the
email
fuck
address
for,
is
Matt?
my email
Go-
address
go
is
away.
sans.deity. My email address is sans.deity@gmail.com. If you want a standard debate, it's $1,500. Book it.
What the fuck?
This is my job. You don't think you're going to get a debate with me for free?
Why not?
Because
I
it's
can
my
debate 10-year-olds
job.
for free. Why
If your
can't I debate
computer's
Matt
broken
for
and you
free?
want me to come fix your computer, you're going to pay.
I can debate 10-year-olds for free. Might as well debate Matt for free.
You can debate
Like you know
10-year-olds for
anything.
free. And you know what? You might even beat one or two of them, but you're done here.
Oh man. Debate 10-year-olds. It might be debates you can win. I actually was grabbing some stuff to keep going over. I've got this textbook on human biology here. I've got this textbook on genetics here. I've got a textbook on anthropology over there. We were going to go through it and just ask over and over, is this textbook wrong or are you wrong, Chuck?
Yeah.
Just like the last time we talked and the time before that and the time before that. Because all Chuck ever brings to the table is, I think that I know biology real good, even though I don't, and I'm admitting at the front that I don't, but I do. And then the man, he can't define male or female, can't define man or woman in a way that makes any fucking sense. I was prepared to sit here and compare definitions, but
Yeah,
we can't have that because that's whatever.
It's difficult because, he's like, oh, a woman is an adult human female. Yes, I agree. I'm fine with that definition. Artie and I have actually talked about it before on a show about how that definition is completely fine. And then you need to define what female it is, which is what the point that Forrest made earlier when he said an adult human female. Forrest said, you're just pushing the actual discussion off one step. And this is the same thing that creationists do when they're like, oh, well, we just need to push it off one further. Why? At the point where we have a topic to actually discuss, why do we need to push it any further down the rails? So
I also I don't even vibe with that definition too hard. This is the,
Me
so I
neither,
actually have
but
it pulled
I've
up
used
here because I was going to show, it's useful sometimes. This is the Stanford Medicine Dictionary. You can look this up online. The Stanford Medical Dictionary, their definition of woman is a term used to describe someone. So it's a term used to describe someone who self-identifies as a woman or as feminine based on what is important to them as an individual, including gender roles, behavior, expression, identity, and or physiology. So self-identification is the only way to hammer down gender terms. That doesn't mean that it's some ideological thing. That just, it's the same. It's psychology and it's internal identity. It is a social construct. By the definition of what gender is, that is the only way to vibe with it. And I've had conversations with serious people who disagree with me on that, and it can be really productive. But even at that point, there is no way that you can rely on woman equals XX. That simply doesn't work. It doesn't. And Chuck is taking it one step further to say not just equals, but gender, a woman is the same thing, is identical to XX. By the way, if you don't know the difference, this is a fun little factoid. You can say woman equals XX. You can also do 3 lines on your equal sign, and it means this is literally the same thing. They're not equivalent. They are identical. And that's what Chuck was saying, is that this is an identical situation, except for all the times when it's not. But it is. But sometimes it isn't. But there's no exceptions except the exceptions.
I love the example. We should probably make a T-shirt. There's just men, women, and Russians.
Yeah, that's it.
I mean, it's funny, and you know, eventually, I guess it comes down to that. Here's the thing. There's my here's the thing again. Sorry, my mouth is in a lot of pain, and I got distracted. Trans folks make up a small portion of the population, but a huge number of people. But even if it was just 5, and even if it was just 1, it would still matter. But even if it's just 5, this notion that he's arguing that we have nothing but their self-identity. How do you prove whether or not I'm left-handed? Well, some people might say, well, I could throw a ball to you, and if you instinctively reach up and grab it with your left hand, then you're left-handed. And that's a cool thing until somebody actually knows that that is one potential method for figuring it out. And if people are perhaps ambidextrous or somebody's training them. So it's a good starting way to tell whether or not you're left-handed, but it's not a foolproof way to tell whether you're left-handed. What if you're ambidextrous? By the way, if your right arm gets cut off, you're left-handed. But that's not what we tend to mean by left-handed. What we mean is this, which hand is dominant psychologically in your head. Say you tend to have a dominant eye. And one of the ways that I was taught to tell that is to look at something and alternate closing eyes and then open both. And whichever one it doesn't move for, or moves the least for, it's your dominant. There's lots of different ways you can do that with left-handed. But to suggest that everybody's right-handed except for the few people who aren't, and that they don't have any justification for their claim that they're left-handed other than that they feel left-handed. And yet it doesn't take much to figure out that some people aren't just saying, oh, I feel like I'm left-handed, as if it's some expression of a delusion. We are good enough at identifying psychologically what's going on in people's heads that we can tell the difference between someone, a parent, a mother who is attaching properly with her new child, and someone who's suffering postpartum depression. We don't have to scan their brain. We don't have to see, which neurotransmitters are firing or not firing. We can tell those things. We're going to get it wrong sometimes. But we recognize that these things are true and exist. I swear, George, if you or anybody else, because it irritates me when you're Chuck. Like, Chuck, thank you. I got George on the brain. Chuck is, I went off and I asked trans people, but they didn't have an answer to this. Well, first of all, I don't think you're actually interviewing trans people. And the reason I say that is, with a couple of exceptions, if you actually sit down with trans people and listen to them tell you what their lived experience is and how they understand themselves, not all of them are going to have a robust understanding of sex or gender. Not all of them are going to be able to explain the biology the way Forrest is. Not all of them are going to know about the distinctions between genders. Not every trans person is an expert on transness, but they're an expert to some extent on their lived experience. And when psychologists interact with people over a long period of time, it becomes very obvious. There's a there there. There's a real thing there. And yes, you may, on a personal level, only have their word for it. But the question you should ask yourself is, why isn't their word enough? Why is it that someone telling you, I am this, why isn't that enough? What is it that you expect? Do you expect them to take a test and show their chromosomes? Because here's the newsflash for you, Chuck. Trans people aren't denying what their chromosomes are. Trans people aren't saying, oh, I was born with XX chromosomes, but they changed to XY. No, that's what the trans thing is. They're saying, I may or may not have been born with XX, XY, XYY. I may or may not have the SRY gene. I may be in any one of these categories, And yet, gender-wise, I am a man. I am a woman. When you're talking to the people, ask yourself, why isn't there say-so enough? And what restrictions are you willing to put on someone else's rights and freedoms based on your dubious and ill-informed conclusions about who they really are? Because if all you're doing is saying, hey, XX is woman, XY is man, not only have you oversimplified things, but you are putting a bunch of people into boxes that we already know they don't belong in. And for what? For what do you gain? Why is the world so obsessed with 1% of the population? Where do they go to the bathroom? Who they're attracted to? What sports team they should play on? It is ridiculous that while fascists and Christian nationalists are taking over the country, that we're worried about whether or not Chuck is convinced that so-and-so's a woman or not. When Trump says there's going to be two genders only, they're going to match your birth certificate, and they're going to be there forever. All that does is deny the reality and the existence of Russia.
Okay, I need to produce the next show. We really need to wrap up. We should have wrapped up like 15 minutes ago. I love you guys, but I really need to wrap up.
So we're going to take another call, and I think they're going to... Yeah, no, that is the end. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Thank you to our call screeners. Thank you to our mods. Thank you to our producer, Arden Hart. Thank you to Jimmy Snow for doing the thing. Thank you to the people out there that promote this show and that tell their friends and family about it. Thank you to our callers, even the ones that kind of sucked. Thank you to the people watching and the people in the chat, even the ones that kind of sucked. Thank you to you for sticking through this intro or an exit or whatever it is. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.